solved a couple of assignments from the portal, and we understood the difference between a println versus a print, and how do you write your first Java program. Okay, and we also did all these operations, right? So all these codes will be made available to you after today's class. Okay, now guys, let's get started with today's content. Okay, let's get started with today's content. So today, first of all, we will start off with the idea of how do I basically make variables of different data types, and we will print different variables, right? So very basic thing to start with, right? How do I make variables of different data types? And then we'll try to print and see the different variables, right? How they are coming into action. Okay. So let's get started, guys. Let's get started, right? So let's say we are making an integer variable a is equal to 5. So you can ideally print the value of a. So system.out.println. Guys, remember, don't use a double quotes here. Otherwise, a will be printed to the screen as it is. If I want to print the value of this variable, right, then simply write it without quotes, right? So 5 will be printed to the screen. Then what you can do? You can do a is equal to a plus 10, right? So what will happen? The new value of a will become 15. Now, if I print a, you will see 15. So see, first of all, 5 will be printed and then 15 will be printed. So these are your integer variables, right? So a is an integer variable, right? It is holding an integer value. Now, guys, one interesting thing. Let's see. If I do int b, so what is this line, guys? This is declaration. I am declaring, hey, compiler, can you reserve the space for an integer data type and label the space as b? But if I don't initialize the value of b and I try to print it, you know what will happen? The compiler will complain, boss, the memory is limited. You have reserved space and you are not using that space. So that is wrong. Dekho kya bol rahe? Variable b might not have been initialized. Bol rahe, boss, already my memory is limited. Okay, you declared and reserved the space for variable b, but you have not stored any value in b. So that is not allowed. So the compiler complains to me. Okay, ki boss, aapne b declare to kiya, but you are not using b. So please use it. Okay, or otherwise don't even declare it. Okay. So that is a problem. Okay, only declaration doesn't work. You have to declare a variable, and later on you also have to initialize the variable or assign a value to a variable if you want to use that particular variable. Okay, so only declaration doesn't work. If you just declare a variable and try to print it, that will give you a compilation error. Okay, now let's try to take different data types, right? Different. So let us first of all deal with whole numbers, right? First, let's deal with whole numbers. And for whole numbers, we saw that there were 4 data types. What are the 4 data types? Byte, short, int, and long, right? So for our discussion in the class, what we will be doing is we will be focusing on int and long only. Okay. Now let's try to make some variables of type int and long, try to, give them certain values and try to print them out. And here we will learn certain important things. Okay. So let's say int a is equal to 5. Okay. And then I say a println a, system.out.println a. So that is fine, right? This will work without any problems. Okay. But guys, let's say if I try to do something like this. So we already know how to make an integer variable. Int a is equal to something. And then later on, you can use it, assign it a different value or whatever you do. Okay. Achha, guys, tell me, is this correct? Is this correct? If I run this code, do you think it will run fine? If I try to run this, do you think it will run fine? Why? Can anybody help me? Why? Why will it not run fine? Why? Reason. You are declaring the same variable twice. That's wrong, right? We have already declared a once, then why do you want to declare it again? Okay. Already assigned the baat here, declare ka baat. It's more of declaration, right? So I'm trying to again redeclare this variable a which has been declared previously. So this will give you an error. But if you do something like this, a equal to 10, it will not complain because you are just updating the value of variable a. You are not declaring it once again. You are assigning a new value to variable a. So this is not a problem. Okay. Now let's try to see. What happens to this, right? Okay. Int a, int b is equal to. Now, what I'm doing is 5. Let's take a big number. I want to tell you something. Okay, let's try to run it and see whether it's fine. Okay, guys. So what is this telling? This is telling boss the integer number is too large. So see, guys, what is happening now? Try to understand. When I make a variable b and tell that its data type is integer, 4 bytes of space will be reserved in the memory, right? Now, ye jo number hai na, this big number 5 and so many times 9 na, this number cannot fit inside 4 bytes of memory. So what happens is, when I run the program now, the compiler reads this number and sees that, boss, this number is very big and it cannot be accommodated inside 4 bytes of space, which is reserved for variable b. So it will complain, ki, boss, this integer number is too large. This cannot be stored inside 4 bytes of memory. Ye jo number hai na, 5 followed by these many number of 9s. This is too large to be stored inside 4 bytes of an integer. Okay, it will not fit. And that is why the compiler is complaining. Boss, you have booked a room for 2 people and you want to accommodate 10 people inside that. That is not possible. This number is too big to be stored inside 4 bytes of memory. So guys, what solution will you come up with? This number is very large. It cannot be fitting inside an int, right? So I will say, let's use the long data type. Let's use the long data type because long can, long reserves 8 bytes of memory. Okay, 8 bytes reserve hota hai. So definitely you can store larger numbers inside a long data type. Okay, so what will I do? Let's try to, do it differently. So instead of int, I will say long b is equal to this. So what I'm telling, hey compiler, can you reserve the space? Can you reserve space in memory? How much space? Sufficient to hold a long data type, right? Long integer. Okay, so 8 bytes of memory will be reserved for b. And now I try to store this number inside that. Okay, so ideally you would be thinking that this should work fine. This should work fine, right? But it again complains integer number too large. So that is where we come to a very, very important point. Guys, what happens is, when we declare constant values now, जब हम लोग ऐसे value declare करें, when I run the program now, this number, okay, compiler doesn't see that I have already reserved the space for a long. ये compiler नहीं देखता. What did I tell you? What happens is, see, this is the assignment operator. First of all, the expression on the right hand side is evaluated and then assigned to the variable on the left hand side. So what happens is the compiler treats all the whole numbers as integers. What just happened? Wait. Where did you go? Okay, I think. Anyways. Okay, so print ln. Okay, so what happens is, guys, when I run the code now, actually what happens is, whenever the compiler reads the whole number, now देखो, ये whole number है, the compiler always reads the whole number as an integer. Okay, compiler will always read the whole number as an integer. So what does the compiler see? This number, it reads this number as an integer and it sees that, boss, this number is too large to be an integer, and that is why it complains. Integer number too large. This number is too large to be an integer. Compiler ने ये देखा ही नहीं. The compiler does not see that I have already reserved the space for a long for this number. Okay, what the compiler sees is, when it reads the whole number, na, by default, the compiler reads it as an integer. It treats the every whole number as an integer. So the compiler will read this number and it will say, hey, this number is very large to be an integer, and it will complain to me. It does not see that I have reserved the space for a long. So what do we do? Whenever you declare a long data type, now generally what do we do at the end is, we write a capital L or a small l at the end of the number. So when I write a capital L or a small l at the end of the number, what I'm telling the compiler, hey compiler, please read this number as a long number. Don't read this whole number as an integer. Read this whole number as a long number. So now the compiler will read this 5999999 whatever as a long number, and it will see, okay, this number is good enough to be a long. Okay, not a problem. This number can fit inside a long. So it will not complain, and then it will store it inside the variable b, which has the space of a long data type. Okay, so now if I run it, let's see. Now it doesn't complain, right? Now it doesn't complain. So what is happening, guys? Ideally, what is happening? Try to understand. Ki boss, every whole number, right? Whenever you run the program, right? Whole numbers are read as integer. The compiler will read the whole number like an integer. So क्या करता है? Compiler reads this number like an integer, and it will complain to you that, boss, this number is very large to be an integer. So you have to explicitly tell the compiler that, hey compiler, the whole number that you are reading, that is not an integer, that is a long. Please read it as a long. Okay. So what do we do? At the end, we write a capital L or a small l. That helps the compiler to understand that the whole number that I am reading, that has to be read as a long. So it will not complain. ठीक है, this big number is possible inside a long data types range. So it will read it, and then it will say, okay, you have a variable b which is sufficient to hold this long data type. So it will store it inside b. And when you print b, you will see that the data is printed. Okay. Are you guys following what is happening here? Is it making sense what I'm trying to say? By default, all the whole numbers are read as integers. So if you want the compiler to read a whole number like a long, you have to explicitly tell the compiler. Otherwise, it will not be able to do and complain to you. Right? So that is something about the long data type. Right? Now once we are clear with how do we do a long data type, now let's try to see for some other data types, right? So int and long are done. That is taken care of the whole number, right? Now let's go to the floating point numbers, or the numbers that have a decimal. Okay. So what are the data types? There you have a float and you have a double, right? So let's see for double first of all. So double, let's say you write the name of the variable as d is equal to, let's say 1.847. Okay. Sorry, 1.847. So what will happen, guys? This is a fraction or a decimal number. It will be stored in this variable d. So what happens? I am telling the compiler, hey compiler, can you please reserve the space to store a double? Okay. What is the name of the space? D. And please store 1.847 inside that. So 8 bytes of space will be reserved in memory and 1.847 will be stored there. So if you print the value of D, you will see that 1.847 is printed. Okay. So this is how we use for doubles. And now, guys, what happens is all the decimal numbers now by default are read as double. ठीक है, मैं क्या बोला? Whole numbers by default are read as integers by the compiler. Similarly, whenever the compiler reads a decimal number, now it treats it as a double. It reads it as a double. So क्या हुआ? It reads the number as a double and then it stores it inside the variable d, which has the space for a double data type. Not a problem. But now guys, see, what if I want to store 1.847 or any decimal number inside a floating variable? So let's say float f is equal to, let's say 1.5. Okay. So I want to store this 1.5 inside the variable f, which is of the data type float. So what I'm telling the compiler, hey compiler, can you please reserve the space for a float data type, right? So how much space will be reserved? 4 bytes of space will be reserved. Okay. And then I want to store 1.5 in there. So what happens, guys? Now try to understand. The compiler, when it reads this decimal number, now by default, it will read it as a double. So the compiler reads this 1.5 as a double. And then the compiler sees, boss, you have this number 1.5, which is a double, and you are trying to store it inside a floating data type. That means you are trying to store a double inside a float. Guys, samjho. What happens? Let's say a double essentially has 8 bytes of information, right? And a float just has 4 bytes of space, right? So guys, if I try to store a double information inside a float, will it not lead to a possible loss of information? Can it not lead to a possible loss of information? Boss, you are trying to store 8 bytes of information inside a space that has only 4 bytes. Try to understand. मैं क्या बोल रहा हूँ? See, first of all, try to understand that if you have some information in 8 bytes, okay, and then you want to store this same information inside 4 bytes of space, what will happen? Won't it lead to a possible loss of conversion? Won't it lead to some loss of data? देखो मैं बताता हूँ, ऐसे समझो guys. You have a space, okay, initially you had some information, right? मैं एक number को read किया 1.5, and I know that this 1.5 is a double. ये एक double है, right? So how much space is required for this 1.5? 8 bytes, right? I have read this as a double. Now, if I try to store this double data, 1.5 is a double. If I try to store this double inside a float, what will happen? मैं बोल रहा हूँ, guys, this is a double data, right? That means it needs 8 bytes of space for storing. See, the data loss might happen or might not happen, right? But what the compiler sees, boss, this is a double number. This is a double. So ideally, for storing a double data, you need 8 bytes of space, right? अगर आपको double store करना है, then you need 8 bytes of space in memory. But what does the compiler see? This number is a double, but you are trying to store it inside f, which is a floating data type. So you are trying to store a double data, which is 1.5 is a double data, and you are trying to store it inside f, which has just 4 bytes of space reserved. So guys, try to understand. If your original data is of 8 bytes, मान लो आपके पास एक बहुत बड़ा space है, and you have data of 8 bytes, right? And then you want to store the same data in 4 bytes. It can lead to some loss of data, ना? भैया जो चीज 8 bytes में accommodate हुआ है, वो 4 bytes में कैसे fit होगा? Okay, it might fit or it might not also fit, right? So be ready for the worst case. Okay. So boss, what the compiler does is, if I try to print f now, you will see what happens. What does the compiler say? See, we are trying to run it. Yeah, I'll take doubts, don't worry. So it is telling incompatible types, possible lossy conversion from double to float. Matlab, what is the compiler telling? It has read this 1.5 as a double, and then you are trying to store a double inside the space of a float. See, f, what is f? F is a floating type data, right? F का space कितना है? 4 bytes of space are reserved only for f. So the compiler is saying, boss, you are trying to store a double data inside the space that is sufficient to hold a float. So it might lead to a possible lossy conversion. Some data might be lost. So that is why the compiler doesn't allow you. कि boss, आप ज़्यादा precise data को, you are trying to store a double inside a float. That is a problem, right? 8 bytes of information you are trying to store in 4 bytes. You can lose some of your critical information here. So this is not allowed. So what will I do it? I will tell the compiler explicitly that, hey compiler, this decimal number that you are reading, please read it as a float. Don't read it as a double. Double की वजह से ये problem आ रहा है ना. The compiler by default is reading this 1.5 like a double, and that is why the problem is coming. So I will tell the compiler, hey compiler, the number that you are reading, please read it like a float. So what will I say? Just write capital F or small f at the end of the number. So I have told the compiler, please read this number 1.5 like a float. So it will read it as a float, and then it will store this number 1.5 inside the, this space f that you have reserved for this particular number. Okay. So now it will not complain, right? Because it has read 1.5 as a float only. So अब इसको problem नहीं हो. Okay, 1.5 is a float, and you are trying to store a floating point number inside the space that is sufficient to hold a float. So that is not a problem at all. Okay. Is this making sense, guys? Yes, guys. I can take up your doubts if you want. Problem समझ में आ रहा है? अगर आप f नहीं लिखोगे ना, तो by default decimal numbers are read as double. तो double को आप store करोगे float में. That is a problem. Okay. Why it is reading double? That is default built inside Java, right? That is default built inside Java. Okay. By default, it happens in Java that all decimal numbers are read as double and all whole numbers are read as integers. Okay. Cool. Now, so we have seen double, float, long, and int, right? Now, what are some other data types? Let us see, a Boolean. Okay. So how do we make a Boolean? Boolean, let's write the variable name as, anything, D. D is already used हो चुका है. So Boolean t is equal to, what can I do, guys? A Boolean variable can either have a true or a false, right? So you can make it as true. Boolean t is equal to true. Now, when you print the value of t, you will see that true is printed on the screen. So whenever you have a Boolean variable, the value of a Boolean variable can be either a true or a false. They go true or a false, right? Similarly, later you can also do t is equal to false, right? So a Boolean variable can either hold a true or hold a false. So one bit of space will be reserved and either a 0 or a 1 will be stored inside a Boolean variable, okay? Therefore, Boolean t is equal to true. When you print t, you see a true. Then you assign false, and then when you print t, you see a false, right? So a Boolean variable always holds either a true or a false. As simple as that. Okay. Now let's move forward and look at a character, right? Let's look at a character. Okay. So how do you make a character data type? So char. You first write char. Let's write the name of the variable. Let's say c is equal to, or assignment operator, all the characters. See, whenever you have a character data type, now a character just includes one single letter. खाली एक single letter आएगा उसमें, right? And you have to write the letters in single quotes. So give quotes and whatever letter you want. Let's say you want a percentage, you write percentage, right? So this character, that is percentage, that will be stored inside this variable c, right? So guys, remember, a character is any character that you see on your keyboard, right? You can have 5. 5 is also a character. You can have t, that is also a character. Anything that you see on a keyboard, that can be a character, right? So guys, for a character data type, you can have a single letter only, and you have to write the letter in single quotes, okay? In single quotes. Now what I'm telling you is, let's say I want to print C. So 2 bytes of space will be reserved for C and A will be stored in that particular location. So if I now print C, you will see that character A is getting printed on the screen. See, let's see. See guys, character A is getting printed on the screen. Now, one very important information here, what actually happens is, you know what? See guys, at the end of the day, everything is stored in zeros and ones, right? So what happens is characters have something known as an ASCII code. Okay. So let me tell you. So you have something known as an ASCII table. Okay. I don't remember the full form. It's something like American Standard Code. I don't remember it, right? So what actually happens is every character has an ASCII mapping. Okay. So small a, if I talk of character small a, then the ASCII code for small a is 97. Okay. The ASCII code for small b is 98. And likewise. Okay. Similarly, ASCII code of capital A is 65. Okay. ASCII code of capital B, that is 66, and likewise, okay? So every character has an ASCII code. So when I actually store a character now, at the end of the day, I am just storing this ASCII code, okay? Internally, characters are also represented by numbers only. So when I say store character A in variable C, what will happen, guys? 2 bytes of space are reserved in the memory, and C is a label to this, space. And A is not stored like this, right? You will have the integer 97 stored in this location. So this 97 will be converted into zeros and ones, and it will be stored here. So what I want you guys to understand is all the characters, they have their ASCII codes. Each character that you see now, there is an ASCII code corresponding to that particular character. And all characters are internally stored using ASCII codes only. Okay. So you are basically storing ASCII codes of characters in memory. And those ASCII codes are converted into zeros and ones. So at the end of the day, characters are also stored as stream of zeros and ones in the memory only. Okay. But for our understanding, okay, this ASCII is very important. And please guys note this down. Capital A ASCII code is 65. Small a ASCII code is 97. These two information, I assume that every one of you should know and remember. Very important, and we'll use it later also. Right? So that is basically a character data type. A character data type, right? So you can write your characters inside single quotes and you can then store it inside memory. Okay. Now, later if you want to do something like this, you can do it. The boss, let's say, later if I want, the C basically stores into. So write it. And then when you print C, you will see that the value has got updated and now you are printing star. Okay. So the ASCII of star will be stored, but when you print now, star and A only will be printed. ASCII codes are not printed, right? Print proper character hi hota, but internally the characters are stored as ASCII codes. Okay. Cool guys. So that was something about characters. Okay? Now, see, these were all the primitive data types that we were talking about, right? These are the primitive data types that we talk about. And guys, see, whatever we have done now, when we use a constant value, now see, I am using a constant value for variable B, right? These constants that we are writing now, 1.847, 5999, all these, 1.5f, true, character A, these are all constants, right? These are not variables, right? These values that we are writing here, these are constants, right? So in programming, we also call constants as literals, okay? So this is a long literal, okay? This is a floating point or double literal, right? Literal matlab kya hota hai? Literal is just a constant, right? So if I say int x is equal to 10, so what is 10? 10 is a constant now. 10 is a constant number that you are assigning to x. Later you can override, that is fine. But what is this 10? What is this 5? These are constant numbers, right? Constant integers. These are not variables. These are constant integers. So I will tell in programming, we tell that this is an integer literal. Okay, 10 is an integer literal. 5 is an integer literal. Okay. Similarly, A is an character literal, right? So whatever constant values that you use in your program, the constant values are known as literals. Literals, okay? Okay. So, 50, this is also an integer literal, right? Similarly, let's say percentage. This is a character literal. Okay. So constants are also known as literals in programming. Okay. Cool. So this is done here. Okay. So that brings us to an end of the 8 primitive data types, right? The 8 primitive data types. What were those 8 primitive data types? Just to quickly recall so that everybody remembers also. We looked at whole numbers. What were they? Byte, short, long, int, right? For floating point numbers, we had float and double. Okay, then we had a boolean, we had a char. These are all the primitive data types. Okay, and each primitive data type reserve different amount of space in memory. Character reserves 2 bytes, float reserves 4 bytes, double reserves 8 bytes, and so on. Okay, now guys, we come to something, there is also a data type known as string. Okay, there is a data type known as string. Okay, and what are strings, guys? String is a non-primitive data type in Java. We will talk about this in more detail. But string is a non-primitive data type in Java. Okay, it is not a primitive or a fundamental data type, right? It's an object. A string is an object. You will understand it in more detail when you study about OOP later. But a string is a non-primitive data type or an object. So how do you make a string? If I want to talk about that, string S capital, then string. Write the name of the string, variable name S is equal to, then all the strings are written in double quotes, okay? And you can write anything that you want inside a string, okay? So yesterday when we were doing a system.out.println and we were writing anything inside a double quotes, if you look at this program, what are these things? Whatever we have written inside double quotes now, they are strings only. So what are strings, guys? String is nothing but it is a collection of multiple characters, one after the other. What is a string? If you look at a string, what exactly is a string? A string is a collection of multiple characters. Dekh lo. T, H, S, I, space. See, space is also a character, right? Space is also a valid character. And there is an ASCII code of space as well. Okay. So what is a string? A string is a collection of multiple characters, one after the other. And you write your strings inside double quotes. So whatever you write inside double quotes, these are strings. Okay. And then if you want to print the string, you can do a println S. So you will see that this string is getting printed. Okay. So string is a non-primitive data type in Java, and we will talk about it in more detail a little bit later. Okay. But you can write your string inside double quotes. So whatever you write inside double quotes, these are strings, and you can print your strings as well. Okay, cool. So this is about all the different data types that we wanted to analyze at this given instance of time. Okay. So guys, are you clear till here? Is everyone clear with the flow of class till here? यहाँ तक अभी तक सब follow कर रहे हो? Okay, cool. Yeah, I'm trying to go slowly only. Why are we not writing D in double? See, Rohini, because by default now, the decimal numbers are interpreted as double only. By default, they are read as double. So you don't need to write a D specifically, right? By default, ये double की तरह read हो रहा है. So why do you want to write a D? Okay. Okay. A has already been declared. Where? No, A hasn't been declared, right? Not a problem. Okay, guys. So let's move forward. Right? And जो भी doubts हो आपका, please feel free to put it in the chats whenever you get your doubt, right? That is not a problem. Okay. And I think I have notes of what we wanted to discuss today. So I've talked about L and F when we are hard coding the values for long and float. We can safely remove this, right? And print the different data types and show the results to students. Done it. User input, we will come to that, right? We'll come to that. Literals also, I told you guys what are literals. What are literals, guys? The constant values that you use in programming, right? They are known as literals. So if you actually look at this, what is this? This is a string literal. This is a string constant, right? So literals are nothing but constants in programming. Okay. Now let's come back here and see what else we have to talk about. Okay, guys. So I think we'll talk about inputs a little bit later. Let's talk about these things. These are also pretty interesting thing, right? So let's talk about comments, right? Let's talk about comments. One by one, I'll try to address all the points from here. And yeah, I don't remember the exact details, right? That's why I write it down at one place, कि क्या पढ़ाना है, so that I don't forget in between the class. Okay. So what are comments, guys? Okay, what are comments? See, whenever you write some important information, right? Whenever you write, you make notes, right? आप अभी जब ये lecture attend कर रहे हो, you are making notes in your copy, right? So that you don't forget later. And when you revisit the lecture later, you are able to understand what this lecture actually means, right? So similarly, what are comments? Comments are basically lines of code comments are basically lines that are simply ignored by the compiler. Okay, comments are for my use, for my better understanding. They are ignored by the compiler. Think of it that you are writing a code today, right? Okay, and 10 days later you might forget कि भैया 10 दिन पहले मेरा दिमाग बहुत अच्छा चला था, and somehow I came up with a very beautiful algorithm. But after 10 days you might not remember what the code is doing. Let's say it happens in a case, right? So what will you do? You want to make notes. In future, when you look at your code, you are able to remember quickly what was the algorithm that you had used. Okay. Similarly, guys, in a company, think of an industry, right? There are multiple people working in an industry, right? Today, I am working in a company. Tomorrow, somebody else will come. Okay. This constant cycle keeps on happening. Nobody is permanent in a company, right? So what happens if today I am writing a code I want to make sure that that code is understandable by all other people as well. है ना? खाली ऐसा नहीं होना चाहिए कि only I and God knows what the code is doing, right? I need to write the code and give information about the code in such a way such that, whoever looks at the code, they can get a decent understanding of what the algorithm is and what is the code doing. So that is where comments come to the picture, right? So comments are like notes to yourself, or you write notes so that you can refer to these notes in the future and you can, understand what your code is doing. Okay. So comments are lines that are simply ignored by the compiler. Okay. So how do you write a comment? Comments are of two types, right? Single line comment and multi-line comment. How do you write a single line comment? Double slash and then write, this is a comment. Okay. This will be ignored by compiler, or this is for my reference. This is for your understanding. Okay. So see, when you start your line with a double slash like this, right? This is a comment. And this line is simply ignored by the compiler. Okay. Similarly, see, you while writing code, you might want to write here. Okay. By default, whole numbers read as integer. See, this is also a comment. So comment will just start with a double slash, right? Double slash means you are talking of a single line comment. And then whatever you write, that will simply be ignored by the compiler. This is for your reference, for your use case, so that later on you can understand the you think of it like you are just writing the super important information so that later on you can refer to it and see what the code is doing. That is what comments are. So these are single line comments. You go when you do a double slash, this is a single line comment. And how do you write a multi-line comment? Let's say you want to write a comment across multiple lines, right? So first of all, put a slash, then put a star, right? Now you can write, this is a multi-line comment. This comment can span across multiple lines. Okay. And when you want to close the comment, put a star and then a slash, close, right? So a multi-line comment is in between slash star and star slash, right? In between them, you can put whatever you want. This is a multi-line comment. That is comment spanning across multiple lines. Okay. So now I see if you look here now, slash star and see a star slash, right? So whatever is written here, online Java compiler, code, compile, run, debug, write your code in this editor and press the run button. This is all a comment only. This entire thing is multi-line comment so that you know how to use this compiler online. Okay. So comments are for our understanding. Compiler just ignores all these lines, right? So compiler will simply ignore this comment, ignore all these comments, right? And just the non-comment lines will execute. So comments are simply ignored by the compiler. Okay. Cool. So this is all about comments, and I'm pretty sure this is a simple topic, so shouldn't take much amount of time, right? So we talked about comments, that yes, comments are for our reference, for our understanding. And we talked about a single line comment that starts with a double slash, and we talked about multi-line comments in Java, and they are simply ignored by the compiler. Okay. Now let's come to another important aspect. Okay. I was talking about strings, right? I was talking about strings, correct? So guys, when you use a plus operator, see, yesterday we saw something like this. Let's move to a different terminal maybe. Okay. So yesterday we saw something like this. Let's say I do int a is equal to 5. Okay. And let's say I make another variable int b is equal to 10. Okay. So when I say println a plus b, what will happen, guys? These two numbers will get added up, 5 plus 10, 15, and 15 will get printed on the screen. Right. So generally when you use a plus operator with two integers, normal addition happens, right? But what I want to tell you, for strings, right? So let's say you have something like this. System dot out dot println. Let's say I write here. See guys, this is a string. In double quotes, we write a string, right? So this is a string, full stop. Okay. And then I write plus, and then I give another string, yo. Okay. So guys, what happens? This time I'm using a plus between two strings, right? So how does the what is writing something? Okay. So now see guys, I have used a plus operator with two strings. So what does plus do? When you use your plus operator with strings, now it actually does a concatenation. Okay. So when you use plus between two strings, it is concatenation. What does concatenation mean? It will just, aisa socho, it will put the strings one after the other. You are concatenating it, right? So this is a string, and after that you will see yo coming, right? You are just, appending strings one after the other. Okay. So this is a string, and at the end of this string, you will add yo, right? Concatenating means you are just joining two strings together. Okay. So when you use a plus with integers, it does a normal addition. But when you use it with strings, it does a concatenation. Okay. So if I ask you hi plus yo, what will be the output? The output will be yo. Okay. Both these strings will get concatenated. Okay. You get a new string with HIYO. Okay. So this is concatenation of strings. Okay. So if I now run this, what will happen? This is a string, full stop, and then immediately you will see YO. Let's try to run it and see. Concatenation मतलब क्या हुआ guys? Concatenation मतलब एक के बाद एक जोड़ दो, right? Joining together. You are joining the strings one after the other. So see what is printed? This is a string, and then yo was joined at the end. So this is a string, full stop yo, that is printed on the screen. Okay. So the plus operator for strings is doing a concatenation. Okay. Now let's come to another important idea or another important concept, right? And for that, let me go to today's PPT. Okay. Okay. So guys, if I ask you what is 8 plus 10, okay, what is 8 plus 10? I am pretty sure everybody will give me the answer correctly, and that is 18. Right? Everybody understands, right? Achha, now tell me one thing. Now tell me very, very simple thing. If I ask you 8 plus 10.8, what will be your answer? And normally, if somebody asks you, hey, what is 8 plus 10.8? It's 18.8, right? It's 18.8. Do you give the answer? Do you say that 8 plus 10.8 is 18? No, you say it's 18.8. So actually, what are you doing? Guys, try to please, sir, kya hua? What happened? 1 second. Break. Okay. I think we'll have a break at 9:30. Let's have it at 9:30, right? At least so that sufficient time. Abhi to 1 घंटे में नहीं हुआ है class को, है ना? So let's have a break later, not this early for sure. Okay. So guys, when I ask you something like this, 8 plus 10.8, see what is happening, guys. This is an integer, right? And what is this? This is a double. And what did you give me the answer in? You gave me the answer in double. So guys, you had an integer, and to that you added a double. So what did you do? While adding 8 and 10.8, आपने ऐसा कुछ किया होगा, 10.8 plus 8.0. So you have internally, you didn't realize, but you have internally converted the integer to a double. And then you have performed the addition, and then you have given the output in double. Do you all agree with me? आपने क्या किया? When I asked you 8 plus 10.8, अब जब add करते हो, what are you doing? 10.8 plus 8.0. So internally you convert this 8 into a double, then perform the addition, and then you give me the answer in double. If you wouldn't have given me the answer in double, then there might have been some data loss. If I say no, I want the answer in integer only. So you will have to convert this 10.8 into an integer. Okay, and if you convert it into the lower integer, 10 plus 8 will be 18. So important information will be lost. Okay. So guys, the same thing happens in programming also, right? If the two data types are same, see now I'm talking about evaluating expressions. Okay. If the two data types are the same, you don't have a problem. Int plus int, you will get the answer in int only. But when you are evaluating an expression which has different data types, then how do you decide? So guys, logically, when you add numbers or when you add anything, right, what happens? You convert. See, integer is less superior than double. So I convert integer into double so that data is not lost. And then I basically give you the answer in double. Okay. So what happens in programming also is there is a concept of typecasting. Okay. Implicit type conversion. So what happens is the less superior data type. Let's say I give you int plus double. If I tell you you have an integer and you have a double. So when you do this now, the integer will be automatically converted into double. This integer will automatically, without you having to tell the compiler, right? The compiler will see, okay, you are trying to add an integer to a double. So it will automatically convert this integer to a double, right? Implicit typecasting will happen. Implicit. What is the meaning of implicit? Automatically will happen, right? Because double is more superior as compared to integer. Hai na? So boss, implicitly the integer will convert it to a double, addition will happen, and then you will get the final answer in double. So this is known as an implicit typecasting or implicit type conversion automatically, right? So what happens is the less superior data type is automatically promoted or converted into a more superior data type. And why is the reason, guys? Arey boss, integer mein whatever information you are storing now, you can for sure store it inside a double data type without any loss of information. So you will convert automatically integer to a double, then your addition will happen and you will get the answer in double. Okay, that is what is implicit typecasting. Okay, so now you will ask me, hey others, how do I know which data type is less superior? How do I know which data type is more superior? And how does typecasting actually happen, right? What is the ordering, right? So let us come to this Google. Okay, Google is our good friend here, right? So let's come to implicit typecasting in Java, right? And here you will see what exactly happens, right? See that it is also known as widening, okay? But I generally call it as implicit typecasting. So what will happen? The less superior data type can be automatically converted into the more superior data type. So a byte can be implicitly converted to a short. A short can be implicitly converted to an int. An int can be implicitly converted to a long. A long can be implicitly converted to a float. Float can be implicitly converted to a double. So this is the hierarchy that is existing, right? So if I want to give you the hierarchy here, let's see. See guys, string is at the topmost level, right? 1 second. I think where was our presentation? 1 second. Okay. So for implicit type conversion, what is the hierarchy of the different data types? See guys, string is the most superior data type, right? Why? Because string is a non-primitive data type. So string is the most superior data type. Okay. Now, in the primitive data types, what is your ordering? What is your ordering, right? See guys, double is the most superior, right? Iske niche you will get a float, okay? Then you will get a long here. Then you will get a int here, something like this, right? And then you will have a short, then you will have a byte. Okay, so this is the hierarchy that is existing. So any less superior data type can be automatically typecasted into a more superior data type without any loss of information. Okay, so this is what is known as implicit typecasting. Boss, when you are evaluating an expression and you have 2 or 3 different data types in that expression, so what will happen is the less superior data types get implicitly typecasted into the more superior data type, and then your expression will be evaluated and you will get the answer in the more superior data type. Okay, that is known as implicit typecasting or widening. ऐसा समझो जो छोटा data है ना, okay, which is less superior, you are automatically converting it into the more superior data type. And this is the general ordering. This is the general ordering. String is the most superior, and among the primitive data types, you have this kind of an order. Okay. I will share the links of the articles as well, right? You can read it automatically. It's pretty interesting also, right? So see guys, what is happening in this example, if you see, byte t is equals to 12, right? So we are storing 12 inside a byte. We have stored 12 inside a byte, right? Not a problem. Okay. अब ये क्या कर रहा है देखो. When I say short q is equal to p, what will happen? See, P का data type क्या है? P is a byte, right? And here you have a short, right? So the compiler will not complain. It will automatically convert this byte into a short and it will store the data here. See, it is not complaining, right? See, if we try to think of this, if you have an integer x is equal to 10, okay? And I say long c is equal to x, it will not complain, right? Because you are trying to store an integer inside a long. That is not a problem. आपका data loss थोड़ी होगा. You are trying to store an integer variable, integer information inside a long data type, so it will not complain. It will automatically typecast. Okay, it will take this data, it will typecast it into a long, and it will store it inside this variable c. So this is implicit or automatic typecasting. Okay, because the less superior data type will get automatically converted into the more superior data type. That is not a problem at all. Similarly, see, float, see, this was a long, you can store a long inside a float. That is not a problem because long will be implicitly typecasted into float. Okay. So this is your implicit typecasting. Okay, I'll share the links also so that you can have a read at the articles. And if you have any doubts, we can take it up after the class as well. Okay, so this is what is implicit typecasting. So now I will give you an example of implicit typecasting that you will see very, very frequently in the course, right? Very, very frequently that will be keeping on coming. So let's say I do something like this. You will see something like this. System.out.println. Okay, this is, one second, guys. Let's say I write something like this. Okay, sorry, not here. This is +5, right? Now you will come and tell me, hey, Adarsh, I know that what is an integer plus integer. I know what is string plus string concatenation is happening. But what is this? You have a string, okay? And to a string, you are adding integer. What happens? Now see, guys, try to understand. This is an expression involving 2 different data types, string plus integer. So what will happen, guys? Implicit typecasting will happen. So this integer will automatically get converted into a string. So think of it like this 5, which is an integer now, this will be implicitly typecasted into a string. And then you will do a string plus string, which is a concatenation. So you will see the final output as this is 5. How? Because first of all, 5 will be converted into a string. And then you are adding the 2 strings. This is one string. And then you are adding it with 5. So normal concatenation will happen and you will see the output as this is 5. Okay, so this is implicit typecasting. Okay, this is +5. So you have a string and an integer. So 2 different data types. So the less superior data type is an integer. This will be converted into a string. Implicit typecasting happens. Then you have 2 strings, string plus string. You have concatenation. You will get the output as this is 5. Okay, this is implicit typecasting in action once again. And in Google, guys, you can also see that if I Google it up, implicit typecasting in Java, there are also pictures also, right? I'll share all these articles and links with you, right? So you can see the pictures also that what is the hierarchy. Okay, but you know, the things will become more and more clear with this. See, a byte can be converted to a short can be converted to an int, a character can be converted to int can be converted to long can be converted to double, float. This is the entire chart, right? And string is a non-primitive data type, right? So string is the most superior. Okay, guys, you need to help me with what is the output of this, right? Achha. Tell me the output, guys. If I run this code, what do you think will be the output? Hello world 5. Hello world 5 will be the output. Does everyone agree? Let's try to run it and see. Hello world 5. Yes. कोई space नहीं रहेगा. Between hello world and 5, there will be no space. See, hello world and 5. Okay. So that is fine, right? But what I'm telling is, see, how are my expressions actually evaluated, right? Now see if I put a +5 also here. Now what do you think what will happen, guys? What do you think? What will be the output? Can anybody guess? Hello world 5 will be the output. And let me tell you what exactly happens. See, hello world 5 will be the output. What is happening, guys? See, hota kya? You have a string plus int, right? So what is my expression? String plus int, right? And see, guys, the order of evaluation is from left to right, right? The expressions are evaluated from left to right. Okay. So your plus operator, you evaluate it from the left to the right. Okay. So now what will happen, guys? First of all, this string plus int will happen. When you are evaluating from left to right, first of all, you will evaluate this thing. So string plus int. So this will be typecasted to a string implicitly, and you will get the output as hello world 5. Okay. Hello world 5. And then you do an addition with this 5, right? So again, a string plus int, this will be typecasted to a string, and you will get the output as hello world 5 5. Okay. So what I want you guys to understand is when you have the plus operator now, plus these operators, right? The operators that we talk about now, their associativity is from left to right. So the order of evaluation of the expression is from left to right. So if I say hi, let's say if I say hi, this is within quotes, right? Hi plus 5 plus 10. So what happens? See, string plus int plus int. So you will evaluate from left to right. So first of all, this will be evaluated. Hi plus 5. What happens, guys? This 5 will be implicitly typecasted to a string, and then you do a concatenation. So you will get the output as hi 5. Okay. Now what happens? Then you add it to 10. So again, you have a string plus integer. So this will be typecasted to a string and hi 5 10. So hi 5 1 0. That will be my output. Okay. So if you run it, you will see that hello world 5 5 is your output because the order of evaluation is from left to right. Okay. But guys, if I give you this thing, if I give you something like this, change the order 5 plus 5 plus hi. Now what will happen, guys? Now the expression that you are seeing, that is an int plus string. Okay. And I know that the order of evaluation is from left to right. So what will I do? First of all, int plus int will happen. And when you are doing an int plus int, normal addition happens. So 5 plus 5 is 10. So you get an output as 10, which is an integer. Then you have 10 plus string. So you have an integer plus string. So this integer will be typecasted to a string and concatenation will happen. So this time you will get the output as 1 0 high, 10 high. Okay. See, let's run it. See guys, 1 0 high. So is this part making sense to everyone? Is this part making sense to everyone? What is happening? What is the difference between these two things? Okay. So, with this, sir, assignments at last, so we can leave after class. We'll do assignments. Don't worry. Today we'll solve all assignments, right? Okay. So now, guys, with this, I also come to another very, very important idea, which derives its origin from maths, actually, right? Boss, when you have many expressions, okay, you have to evaluate an expression. Okay, let's say I give you an expression 5 plus 10 by 5 minus 6 into 5, something like that. I give you a complex expression to evaluate, right? So how will the expression be evaluated? First of all, do you do division, you do a multiplication or something like that? I am pretty sure that many of you have heard about this term BODMAS in mathematics. BODMAS, first you evaluate brackets, then you evaluate off, then division, multiplication, addition, subtraction, right? So whenever we were given an expression, we used to follow the BODMAS rule and we arrived at an answer. So similarly, in programming also, we have the concept of BODMAS, okay? We call it as BEDMAS, okay? So see, we may be talking of two terms here, precedence and associativity. First of all, let's talk of precedence. What is precedence? Precedence is the priority that you give to any operator. So brackets has the highest priority. Okay. So first of all, you will be evaluating the brackets. Okay. Then you have exponentiation. Okay. We don't have in Java at this point of time. So let's forget about this. So the highest priority, see, the order of evaluation is BEDMAS. First of all, the highest priority is for brackets. So brackets has the highest precedence. Then guys, division and multiplication, they have the same priority in programming. Division and multiplication, they are at the same precedence level. Okay, they have the same priority. And similarly, addition and subtraction, they have the same precedence level. Okay, so if I want to tell you, brackets has the highest precedence. Okay, division and multiplication are a little bit down. Okay, and addition and subtraction are a little bit down. This is the precedence. So brackets has the highest precedence or priority. Division and multiplication have the same precedence. Addition and subtraction also have the same precedence. Okay, so precedence is basically the priority, right? So now what do I tell you? Guys, how do you decide? So first of all, I see that yes, division and multiplication need to be done before addition and subtraction, right? But guys, how will you evaluate between what to do first, right? Division pehle kare ya multiplication kare? Both have the same precedence, right? So do you want to do a division first or do you want to multiply first? So that is where we come to the concept of associativity. Associativity tells me how do I evaluate the operators of the same precedence. Okay, so the associativity for all these operators are from left to right. Okay, so see guys, multiplication and division have the same precedence. What is the associativity? The associativity is from left to right. So look from the left and go to the right. So kya hai pehle? First division comes, so evaluate this division. And then you will be evaluating this multiplication, right? So first of all, you will see the precedence, the thing that has the highest precedence that will get executed. And when you have operators of the same precedence, then you will be deciding by the associativity. What is the order of evaluation? Associativity. So for all major operators, the associativity is from left to right. So look at this. When you have to evaluate division and multiplication, you will evaluate from left to right. So jo pehle aaya, usko pehle evaluate karoge. Okay. So what is 10 by 5? 2. 5 plus 2 minus what is 6 into 5? 30. Right. So first this is evaluated, then this will get evaluated. Okay. And then again, you see guys, You have plus and minus, both have the same precedence. So in which order do you execute? From left to right. So first you will do an addition, 7, then you will do a subtraction. Okay. So what is precedence, guys? Whenever we talk of operators, whenever we talk of expressions to evaluate, right, we have a term known as precedence. Bed mass, right? Precedence gives me the priority. कि boss, what operator do I evaluate first? पहले किस चीज को evaluate करोगे? That is what is precedence. Okay. And if you have the operators at the same precedence, then how do you decide? Then you look at associativity. कि boss, if I have multiple operators of the same precedence, in what order do I evaluate? The associativity will tell you that. Associativity can be either left to right, as is the case with most of the operators, or it can be from right to left. Okay. What is one operator that has a right to left associativity? The assignment operator, right? So let's say if I do something like this, A assign B equal to C equal to 10. Okay. So how does this is the assignment operator? There are 3 assignment operators, right? All the 3 assignment operators have the same precedence, right? Obviously. So guys, the associativity for the assignment operator is from right to left. Okay, this is one operator that has associativity from right to left. So first of all, this operator will be evaluated. So how does the assignment operator work? It will take the value from the right hand side, assign it to the variable on the left hand side. So first of all, C will get the value 10. Then this assignment operator will run. What will happen? The value of C will be taken and it will be assigned to B. Then B will get the value of C, which is also 10. Then this assignment operator will run. So the value of B will be taken and assigned to this variable A. So A will also contain the same value as B, that is 10. Okay. So this is one operator, the assignment operator, that has the associativity from right to left. But all the mathematical operators and all operators of our interest, they have generally the associativity from left to right only. Okay. So guys, with this, can you help me with one small task? Guys, I want to print here hello world 10. What can I do? In the first line, in line number 12, I want to print hello world 10. I don't want to print hello world 5. What should I do? Can anybody help me? मेरे को पहले बताना है कि first do that int plus int and then only do some other part of the expression. I can put brackets. I can put parentheses, right? Do you all agree? I can put brackets. Yes. Via brackets, जब आप normal expression में brackets देते हो, you change the precedence, right? So if I put brackets here now, what will happen? See, you have a string plus you have int plus int. So now you want to evaluate this expression. First priority will be given to brackets. Okay, this is the highest precedence. So you will evaluate this. Int plus int, 5 plus 5 will be 10. Then you have string plus int, that is hello world plus 10. Now you will see string plus int, so it will automatically typecast this into string and then concatenation will happen. So if I put a bracket here, I can override the precedence of the expression, right? I am telling first evaluate this, then you have to do the concatenation, right? So let's get started, right? So these are pretty basic questions, right, to test your understanding. So let's try to, solve these questions one by one, and it will be pretty quick since we have already covered all the concepts, right? So let's come to variable practice question 1. So declare a variable named var and assign it a value of 10. Then print the string my num is followed by the value stored in the variable. So the output should be my num is and then the value that is in the variable. This should be the output. So what should I do, guys? First of all, let's make a variable by the name of var. What will be the data type of the variable? Int, because you want to store 10, right? So int var is equal to 10, right? So I've done a declaration and assignment. Now what do I want to print? I want to print to the screen what? My num is followed by the number. So can I do something like this? My num is followed by the number, right? Space. Then I do a plus and then I write here a var. So guys, what will happen? See, my num is, then I add var. So this var is an integer. This will be typecasted into a string implicitly. And then I will see the output as my num is 10. Okay. So this we have already seen just now. This is an example of implicit typecasting. Okay. So if you want to just ensure, let's try to quickly run it against any input, run code. Okay, so my num is 10, that's coming fine, right? So let's try to submit this very basic code. Okay, so all the test cases passed, right? You just had to print my number is and then the value of the number, right? So I just used a concatenation, right? My num is plus var. So string plus an integer. Integer got typecasted into string and then the output was printed. So my num is 10. Okay, cool. So I'm pretty sure let's discuss all the questions and then only I will take up doubts. I am pretty sure most of the folks should be clear by now with this. Okay, so let's move forward, right? And come to variable practice question 2. Oh, why is the code already there? Let's come to it, right? So what do I want to do, guys? Declare a variable of type float named var and initialize its value to 10.45. So I need a floating point variable by the name of var and its value should be 10.45. So let's make it float var is equal to 10.45. I can't leave like this, right? I need to write an F at the end because decimal numbers are by default read as double by the compiler. So float var equal to 10.45 F. Done. After that, reinitialize the value to 20.55. Now I want to change its value to 20.55. Guys, I don't want to write again float var is equal to 20.55. That will be wrong. You have already declared the variable now. Now you just want to update the value. I will say var is equal to 20.55f. Okay, so 20.55 will be taken, read as a floating point number and stored in the variable var. So now the value of var is updated to 20.55. And now you want to print var, so just write the system.out.println var. That will be printed. Okay, let's try to submit it. Let's see. Okay, so all the test cases passed, right? Anybody having any doubts in these couple of problems that we have just now discussed? Anybody, any difficulties? No, very basic, very simple, not a problem. So that's why I just taught you the concept before only. No space after 10. Where is space? 1 second. Why do we have to put f every time? Because you need to put it, right? Otherwise, it will see that, okay, this is a double and you are trying to store a double inside a float. So it will complain, right? So you need to put f always. Okay. No space after 10. Where is 13? Yeah, सब solve नहीं किया, but yes, now we need to solve, right? And now you need to understand. No space after 10. Why do I need a space after 10 here? I just wanted to print my num is 10, job done, right? So after 10, why do you need a space? You don't need a space, right? So that's it, guys. So these are the couple of questions, right? Now let's move on to variable practice question 3. And please stop me wherever you get any problems, wherever you get any doubts, right? So let's come to variable practice question 3. Okay. Now, declare an integer variable A and assign its value to be 10. Declare another variable B and assign its value to be 20. Can everybody quickly start doing alongside me? अगर आपने नहीं भी किया है, can you please open up the question and try to code alongside? It's pretty simple. Yes. Declare another variable C that is storing the sum of A and B and print the value of C. So essentially what I want is one variable A which has the value 10, another variable B has the value 20. Another variable will be C which is storing the sum of A and B and I need to print the value of C. So what do? Let's do. Int A is equal to 10, declared the variable A and assigned it the value 10. Another variable int B is equal to 20, declared and initialized, right? Now declare another variable C. So int C is equal to, what is its value? Sum of A and B. So I will see C is equals to A plus B. So this expression will be evaluated A plus B and then it will be assigned to C. Okay. So that's fine, right? So the value of C will be 10 plus 20, that is 30. And now I want to print the value of C. So just do a system.out.println C. Okay. So let's try to submit it. No point of running it. It's very basic. Okay, so all the test cases passed here. Yes. Anybody, guys, anybody having any problems here? Declared the variable A, declared the variable B, declared variable C, which is the summation of A and B, and then I have printed the variable C. Okay, as simple as that. Cool. Now we'll come to question number 8 and everything. What are these test cases? These are the test cases, right? So they have, I don't know, the test case should be as simple as they are just seeing that 30 should be printed in the output, right? Something like that. No, if you write C like this now, then the summation will not be printed. Only C will be printed. This is a string. Try to understand. I want to print the value of the variable C, not C as it is, right? So if you use a double quotes, then you are wrong. You are printing C actually, but I need to print the value of the variable C. Okay. So this was variable practice question 3. Okay. These are all brushed up so that you all can exercise, your concepts and try to make sure that you are clear, right? So let's come to, guys, variable practice question 4. Declare two numbers A and B and initialize the values as 1, 0, 4, 2 and 7. Okay, simple, we can do it. Declare another two variables, co and rem, that will store the quotient and remainder of these numbers, taking A as the dividend. So this is my dividend and B as the divisor. So I need to divide 1042 by 7 and I want to store the quotient and remainder in two other variables. Okay. And then we want to print quotient and remainder in a line separated by a space. Okay. So let's do it, guys. First of all, let's declare two numbers A and B. Int A, what is the value? 1, 0. Actually, you can also do it like this, right? You can even declare two variables together, int A, comma B. So both the variables have been declared, right? Then you can say A is equal to 1042. Okay. Initialize. Then you can say B is equal to 7. Okay. Now I have two variables A and B. Now what do I need? I need another two variables, quotient and divisor. So what is quotient, guys? Quotient is nothing but the quotient when you divide A by B. So what this will be? A by B. When you divide, use a divide operator, what happens? You get the quotient because division is a floor division. So I get the quotient. And for remainder, what will I use, guys? For remainder, I will be using the modulo operator. So when I do A modulo B, that will give me the remainder. What is the remainder? When you divide 1042 by 7. Okay? And now what they want us to do is they want us to print the quotient in a line, quotient and remainder in a line separated by space. Okay. So let's assume that quotient is 10 and remainder is 5. Then they want us to print something like this. 10, have a space, then 5. That's the print right now, right? So I want to print the quotient and remainder in a single line separated by a space, right? So what do? System.out.println. Okay. First of all, I'll be printing the quotient. So write quotient, right? Then after quotient, I want to print a space, add a space, then I want to print the remainder. Now guys, try to understand what is happening here, right? So I am printing quotient, space, and a remainder, adding all these three up, right? So what is happening, guys? You have an integer plus string plus integer. So what will happen, guys? This integer will be first of all converted to string, and these two concatenation will happen. So let's say the quotient is 10, right? So 10 plus space, right? 10 plus space. So what will happen? 10 space you will get, okay? And then to this string, you will concatenate remainder, right? So let's say remainder is 5. So again, string plus integer, this will get typecasted to a string and concatenation will happen. So you will get 10 space 5. This string will be printed in the output. Okay. So you have the quotient, then you have to add space to it, and then you have to add remainder. Okay. So implicit typecasting happens. This, quotient first of all will be converted to a string. So whatever is the value, you will add space after that. Okay. You get a resultant string, and then you are adding remainder to that, right? So basically, again, a type conversion will happen and you will get your answer. Okay. So let's try to run the code first, maybe. Give any dummy input, I don't care. Let's run code and see whether the quotient and remainder are coming separated by a single space. Let us try to analyze that. See 148, then you have a space, then you have 6. So it's coming fine, right? So let's try to submit it. ऐसे space लाओगे, ठीक है? You have quotient. After that, you want to add a space. So to give a plus sign and give a space, right? So what will happen? Quotient will be converted to string, and then I will, concatenate the space. So automatically the space is introduced. And after that, you have adding remainder. So again, this remainder will be converted to string, and again, concatenation will happen. So you will get the quotient and the remainder separated by a space in between. Okay? Is this making sense, guys? I think I got a few doubts from folks regarding this question. Is this making sense? Yes or no? Yes. Can we write? Can we use backslash T? No, I won't say that use a tab or anything like that, right? They're asking you to give a space. So just use a normal space character, right? A normal space. You have a string which is just consisting of space, right? So when you add, the space will automatically be introduced in the output, right? Okay. First question, how to get space? See, in the first question, where was space? If you look very, very carefully in my code, my num is, and then in this string only I had a space at the end. Dekho, my num is, and then I had written a space, right? Dekho, this is here. That is why the space is coming here. My num is space, this is one string, and var is another string, right? But in this case, what is happening? After quotient, I have to explicitly add a space, and then I add the remainder. Okay, that is what is happening. Okay. And see, guys, don't use characters, always use strings, right? Because, while concatenation, strings are more simpler to deal with. Okay, cool. So this should be clear now, at least. Now we can move forward. Okay. Now let's come to variable practice question 5, right? And let's try to see what this question is asking us to do and try to understand it. Okay. So declare 3 variables, v1, v2, and v3 of type float, and initialize the values as 10.5, 12.5, and 12.15, whatever. Then declare another variable average of type float that will store the average of these 3 variables. That is, average is nothing but v1 plus v2 plus v3 by 3. Not a problem. Print the average variable in a new line. Okay. So let's quickly do it. Guys, one thing that I want you guys to understand is, if you are doing a float divided by an integer, what will you get the output in? Can anybody help me? Float divided by integer, what will be the output in? Float. Output will be in float, right? You get the output in the more superior data type, right? Okay. Why some test cases run, not some? No, might be your code is not correct, okay, or might be the test cases might be faulty, but the chances of test cases being faulty are less, okay. So if some test cases are running, some are not running, that is, for some test cases your code works fine, but for some test cases it is not working fine. That is the point. Okay. So let's quickly declare variables, right? So float v1, v2, v3, okay, v1, v2, v3, declare 3 variables, right? Now let's initialize values. So v1 is equal to 10.5f, okay. V2 is equal to 12.5f. V3 is equal to 12.15f. Okay, done. Now another variable, what is that? Float. Float. Average, right? Declare another variable, average is equal to, it will be the average of these 3. So V1 plus V2 plus V3 by 3. So see guys, the numerator is entirely float and the denominator is integer. So the output will be a float only, not a problem, right? Now see that this division will be proper, right? Because you are dividing a float by an integer, right? So you will get the proper division output as you are expecting, right? But if you divide integer by integer, then the output is given in integer only, right? So इसमें कोई problem नहीं होगा. And I want to print an average. So system.out.println average. Okay. Let's try to quickly, run the code for a dummy input. Let's see. So if you just use a calculator to see what's the average, you can verify that the average is 11.716667, right? So if you are dividing a float by an integer, you get the answer in float only, right? So this division is proper division. When we were dividing integer by integer, then we were, doing a float division, because, integer by integer will give you an integer only as the output. Okay. So now let's try to submit this. Okay. So all the test cases passed, right? So this is also fine, right? Can we move ahead, guys? Yes. Shall we move ahead? Okay, great. Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 कर दिया क्या हम लोगों के? Now we have left with 8, right? So let's discuss variable practice question 8. So what it is telling, write a Java program that takes a variable named input, assigns it the value 8, and prints the multiplication table up to 10. Okay. So we have to print 8 into 1 equal to 8, 8 into 2 equal to 16, 8 into 3 equal to 24 till 10. Okay. So let's write the code, guys. Int. What is my number? Variable named input, right? So my name of the variable is input, and let's assign the value as 8. Now I want to print the table. Okay. So we don't know loops at this moment, right? So I will be, writing basic code only so that you are able to understand. Println. What do I need to write, guys? Now try to understand very, very carefully. 8 into 1 equal to 8. So this 8 is fixed. If you see now, 8 into 1, 8 into 2, 8 into 3. This is fixed, right? So see, how will I write? 8 into, see, 8. Okay. Or what you also can do like this. That is not a problem. Input plus. Okay. Then input plus matlab 8 aa gaya. Now what do I need in the string? Space and then put an into sign, right? So 8, after that you have a space, then you have an into sign, then again put a space, right? Okay. Then 8 into, then let's do it like this. Okay. 1. Okay. So 8 into 1, 8 into 1. Okay, ideally I can hard code also if you want. I don't have a problem. But okay, 8 into 1 is equal to, put a space, put equal to, put a space, right? And then what do I need to add? I need to add what? Input into 1. So what will be that? Input into 1. Okay. With loops, this will become very, very simple. But at this point of time, you don't know loops. So I'll have to do the hard work of writing it. Okay. So see, guys, first of all, you write input. What is the value of input? 8. Then you have space into 8 into 1. Then again a space equal to space. And then I want to write the value of 8 into 1. So what is that? Do input into 1 and put brackets so that this is evaluated first. Integer into integer will be integer, and then you will get the answer properly. Similarly, here it will be for 2, here for 3, here for 4, here for 5, here for 6, here for 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay, let's just write here 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2. Okay, now first of all, let's try to run this and see whether it's working fine or not, right? Let's provide it a dummy input. Let's try to run the code once and see what is the output coming. Okay, so see, guys, 8 into 1 equal to 8, 8 into 2 equal to 16, 8 into 3 equal to 24. The table is coming fine, right? But if you just want to also run it against the correct code, right? You can also do a run against correct code to see what is the actual output that they want, right? So see, guys, here if you see now, my into and their into is looking a little bit different. So can you tell me what do we have to do? Why are the test case? Why the test case will not pass if you do an into here? You have to use X. They are actually using X here. Okay, a small X. Okay, so instead of into, you have to write X here. Okay. ये चीज थोड़ा ध्यान रखना, otherwise your test cases will fail. Okay. Now it should come fine. In question number 5, don't we have to write F after diff? No, you don't have to write, right? Because see, the compiler already knows now, boss, V1, V2, V3 are floats. So you are adding 3 floats, dividing it by an integer. So a float by an integer will automatically be a float only. So you don't have to explicitly write F. You have to explicitly write F only when you are dealing with literals. तब आपको बताना पड़ता है कि read this number as a float. But in the last case, V1 plus V2 plus V3 was already a float, right? So float by integer, compiler knows that the output will be a float, right? So you don't have to explicitly tell. Okay. Okay, cool. Actually, you can do also like this. If you want, if you want to do a full hard coding, you can do. Okay, Umesh, you can do. Input into 1 equal to 8, you can do like that also, right? But I didn't do a full hard coding. Let's try to submit it and see whether it works fine or not. Okay, so all the test cases have passed here, right? So let's just take one line here and understand what is happening. And with that, you will understand the entire code, right? So if you see, what are we doing, guys, in this line? Input, see, system.out.println, input plus, and then you have this string, right? So what is input? 8. मैं लिख रहा हूँ क्या हो रहा है? 8 plus, you have space, then you have into, again a space, you have 3, again a space equal to, again a space, this, and plus, along with this, you have this bracket. So first of all, this will be evaluated. What is the value of input? 8. 8 into 3 is 24, right? So here you will have a plus 24. Okay. Now see guys, you have this entire expression. So what will happen? Integer plus string plus integer. So typecasting will happen. So automatically 8 will be converted to string and you will get 8 space into space 3 space equal to space. And then again, this 24 will also be typecasted into a string, right? And you will get the output as 8 space x space 3 space equal to space 24. This is the final output that you will get for this particular type, right? So it's nothing, guys. You are just concatenating multiple strings, right? And just make sure that you do input into 3 within brackets so that this is evaluated first, and then you can concatenate it with your resultant strings. Okay? Cool. Is this making sense, guys? Is everyone able to follow what is happening with these questions? Yes? Yeah, you can solve this using loops as well later, not today, later. Okay? Why don't we write input into 1 is equal to input 1? I didn't get your question. Input cross 1 equal to input into 1, right? This is the actual answer, right? And this is the string thing. The 8x1 is equal to 1. Okay? Cool, guys. So let's move forward, right? So I think we have discussed all the conditional variable questions that we wanted to discuss. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 8. All these variable practice problems have been discussed. Okay. So now, guys, let's come to, taking inputs from the user, and then we'll talk about the remaining portions of the content that we have to do today. Okay. So, guys, till now, whatever variables we have been using, right? We have been hard coding the value of the variables, right? And we have been assigning them on our own, right? We never interacted with the user to take the input. But in a practical program, you should interact with the user so that the user is also able to supply some input via the keyboard. Okay. So the question comes, boss, you want to interact with the user and you want to take inputs from the user. So how do you do that? How do you actually take inputs for your variable? How do you do that? So there we come to a very important concept of using a scanner to take inputs from the user. So let me tell you, how does a scanner actually work and how do we understand the working of the scanner? Okay. So what do we write? Scanner. Okay. Then you can write the name of the scanner. You can write whatever name you want. I'll write SC. Scanner SC is equal to, then we write new scanner. Then within brackets, you will write system.in. Okay. So this line, guys, you will have to remember for some time till you truly understand its meaning, right? But try to understand, it is doing something like this. Aisa socho, guys, what is scanner? Think of the scanner like a remote. Okay. Think of the scanner object like a remote. A scanner is nothing but a remote, right? Using this remote, you are able to take inputs from the user, right? So, मैं क्या बोल रहा हूँ, guys? Scanner. There is a scanner by the name of SC. So the name of this remote is SC. SC is the name of this scanner object. Okay. So a scanner is an object. Okay. So think of scanner like a TV remote, right? So boss, I have a scanner object. The name of the scanner is SC. The label of the scanner object is SC. And what does this right part do? New. This new keyword will actually create the object for you. So मैं क्या बोल रहा हूँ, boss? SC, what is SC? SC is a label to a scanner. Okay, SC जो है ना, SC is pointing to a scanner. Okay, scanner is a remote. Think of it like SC is pointing to a remote. And how is the remote created? With this new keyword. So new scanner system.in means you will be creating a new scanner object that will take inputs from system.in. That is whatever is the standard input of the system, the scanner will read inputs from there. So what does this line mean? This line means that, see, new scanner system.in, this part will create a new scanner object for you. A new scanner object will be created, okay? And this will be, adept at taking inputs from the system.in. That is, this scanner object will read inputs from the standard input of the system. That is from the keyboard. It will read inputs from the keyboard, right? And boss, the label of this scanner object is SC. The name of this scanner object is SC. So think that new scanner system.in, this will create a remote for you. A remote will be created, a TV remote, right? And using this remote, you can take inputs from the keyboard. That is the standard input of the system. And what is the name of the remote? The name of the remote is SC. You can use whatever name that you want. Okay. So this line is creating a scanner object that should be taking inputs from the standard input or from the keyboard. Okay. Now, guys, you will tell me, hey, Adarsh, you gave me a remote, right? But how do I operate the remote? Just having the TV remote in your hand is of no use, right? You should know the meaning of the different buttons on that remote, right? आपको पता होगा how do you raise the volume, how do you decrease the volume, how do you change the channel, then only you will be able to use the remote. So similarly, what happens is, guys, think of it like, I'm trying to simplify it as simple as possible, right? Because I don't want to go into the complex definitions of, objects, methods at this point of time. So think of it like you have a remote, okay? You have your scanner remote by the name of SC, right? Now there are multiple buttons on this remote, right? There are multiple buttons, right? And every button has a different functionality, okay? There will be one button that will help you to read input of integer. There is another button that will help you to read input of a long. There is another button that when you press this button, you can read a floating point number. There is another button which will help you to read a double data type from the keyboard, right? So what I want to tell you is the scanner is like an object, okay? Scanner is an object or a remote that has multiple functions or multiple buttons on it, right? And using different functions or using different buttons, you can take inputs of different data types from the keyboard. Okay. So first of all, now you will ask me, okay, Adarsh, now can you tell me some buttons on the scanner? How do I use the scanner object that you have just now created, right? Because if you don't know how to use a scanner, it is of waste to you, right? So the first method or the first function or the first button that we are going to talk about is next int. Okay. So how do I take input of an integer? First of all, we'll focus on how do we take input of an integer. Okay. So I say sc dot next int. There is a method next int. Okay. So you will have to write sc is the name of the remote, sc dot. The button name is next int. So I will say sc dot next int, then bracket open, bracket close, right? So next int will help us to read an integer from the terminal or from the keyboard, right? So let's do like this: int age is equal to sc dot next int. So what will happen, guys? Sc dot next int will read an integer from the keyboard or from the terminal, right? It will read an integer from the terminal and it will store it inside this variable a. And later on, you can print the value of this variable a. Okay. So next int is a method or next int is a button on my scanner remote using which you can read an integer from the terminal or from the keyboard. Okay. So how does this line work, guys? sc.nextInt will read an integer and then it will store that integer in the variable a. And then I'm printing the value of the variable a. Okay. Let's try to run this code and see. Okay. So now you are getting an error by the compiler. Cannot find the symbol scanner. So the compiler is complaining to you that, hey, I don't know what a scanner is. Scanner क्या मेरे को पता ही नहीं है ना? So this is very logical, right? How will a compiler know what a scanner is, right? अगर मैं यहाँ पे कुछ ऐसा लिख देता, printer. Okay, if I write anything that I want, how does a compiler know what a scanner is or what is a printer, right? What I want to say is you can write anything now, but how do you make sure that the compiler knows what a scanner is? The compiler at this instance is complaining to you that I don't know what is a scanner. Compiler को पता ही नहीं कि scanner का कोई remote है. The compiler doesn't know that a scanner remote exists. है ना? उनको नहीं पता है. The compiler is not aware of what a scanner is. So how do we make the compiler aware? So guys, try to understand the people who are writing the language Java, right? They understood that taking inputs is something that almost every people will be doing. Almost all the people writing code will be interacting with the user and will be taking inputs from the keyboard or terminal. And so they understood that yes, taking inputs is a very, very common feature. And so the people who develop Java, right, or certain programmers, they have already written the entire program for scanner. They have already written all the code for scanner. This is how the scanner will be working. This is how the scanner will scan and take the integer as input. This is how the scanner will read a double as input, right? So all the definitions and manual, think of it like the manual. Okay, simple terms में बताऊँ तो manual. Manual क्या हुआ, guys? What is a scanner? What are the different methods? How do the different methods work? All the details of the scanner and all the code for the scanner has already been written by software developers in the past, right? So that I don't again have to tell the compiler what is a scanner, and I don't have to tell the compiler how to take the input of an integer, how to take the input of a double, and all these things, right? So scanner is something that already people have written, okay? And I just need to reuse that particular code that people have written. Pura history, geography of the scanner has been written by people. All the definitions, all the methods, all the buttons, all the implementations, right? Everything, all the Ramayana, Mahabharata, all the details, the entire encyclopedia of scanner is written by programmers. But still a compiler is complaining, I don't know what a scanner is. So here we come to the important concept of packages. Okay. So what happens, guys, is the scanner, the code for the scanner now is written in some particular file. Okay. So Java has a library. I will tell you what happens once again. So we'll write a line here, import java.util.star. What is the meaning? From Java standard library, there is a library of Java, right? Inside the Java standard library, there is a util package. Okay, what is a package? Think of the package like a folder. Okay, package kya hua in simple terms, think of package like a folder. And inside the folder, you can have multiple files, right? So whenever you are making a project, right? I'm pretty sure all of you have made projects in colleges and schools. And what did you do? You created your own folder for your project and you used to store photos, write-ups, articles in that particular folder to keep it organized, right? Similarly, what happens is inside Java standard library, now there are multiple packages or multiple folders, right? So inside Java standard library, there is a util package. There is a package by the name of util. And inside this util package, there are multiple files. Inside this util folder, there are multiple files. Okay. And one of the files is known as a scanner. Okay. One of the file is a scanner file. Okay. Which will tell all the details of the scanner. Okay. Have all the details, all implementations for scanner. So what I'm telling is import from Java standard library. From the util package, import star. That is star matlab import all the files. Star stands for all the files, right? So import all the files from the util package that is present inside the standard library of Java. So automatically all the files will be imported, and along with that, the scanner file will also get imported. So now the compiler will know what a scanner is and it will not complain to you. So this is the concept of packages. What are packages? Packages, think of packages like folders that have files inside that, right? And inside Java standard library, there are many packages and many files that are already written by developers that we can import and use. So I am just telling the compiler, hey compiler, can you import the util from Java standard library? Can you import the util package? And inside the util package, just import all the files, right? So Java ke standard library mein there is a util package. Can you import all the files that are present inside the util package? So when the compiler imports all the files from the util package, it automatically becomes aware of what a scanner is. Because automatically, in all the files, there is also a file for scanner. So the compiler now knows what a scanner object is, and now it will not complain to you, right? So this imports that you do, this we are basically importing certain files from certain packages. Okay. You might also do like this: import java.util.scanner. Ki boss, inside Java standard library from the util package, please import the scanner file. Okay. But for safety, what I generally do is I just include all the files, right? So that whatever information the compiler should be aware of, it gets it. Okay. So now when you run, you will see that compilation error that was coming, right? I don't know what a scanner is, unknown symbol scanner. That gets removed because now with the importing of the files in the util package, the compiler is now aware of what a scanner is. It is now aware of the entire definition of the scanner object, all the buttons and the methods that are associated with the scanner. So now it doesn't complain anything to me. Now see guys, my cursor is blinking. Why is the cursor blinking? It is waiting for an input. So the first line is we created a scanner object. Now we are standing on line number 13. We are waiting on line number 13. Okay. So sc.nextInt is now working. Okay. And it is waiting for an input. Now my cursor is basically waiting for an input. So when I give it an input, it will scan that input and store it inside integer a. Okay. So let's take an example. Let's say I write the number 15, right? Now when do I move to the next line, or when do I know that the input has been done, right? Because I can write something wrong also, and then I need to remove it via backspace. So what happens is whatever input that you want to supply, now write that input and then press enter. So let's see what happens. I write 50 and I press enter. The moment I will press enter, now what will happen? sc.nextInt ko pata chal gaya ki boss, there is one line of information. See, the moment I press enter now, sc.nextInt know that there is one line of information. So it will read the number 15 as an integer and store it inside the variable a. And then I will print the contents of a, that is 15. So the moment I press enter, you will see that 15 is again printed in the next line. See, okay. So guys, what does nextInt does? NextInt reads, okay, very important. NextInt reads an integer, okay, till it encounters a new line character, okay, or it encounters a space. So kya hota hai guys? NextInt will read an integer until it gets a space or it gets a new line character. The moment it gets a new line character or it gets a space, it will stop, right? So this reads an integer till it encounters a new line character or a space. Okay. So space and new line characters are delimiters, right? So nextInt will keep on reading an integer until it gets a space or it gets a new line character. At that moment, it will stop. Okay. Now let's take another example here to clarify something. Let's say int b. I'm reading another integer and storing it in b, and then let's print the values of a and b. Okay. Now if I run it, you will see that first of all, I'm waiting at line number 30. This sc.nextInt is waiting for you to supply some input, right? So what do I do, guys? See, I write 10 and I press enter. So what has happened, guys? The moment I press enter, this sc.nextInt will start reading input. So it will read the input 10 and then it encounters the new line character. So it will stop and it will store the value 10 in the variable a. Okay. Now again, the cursor is blinking. Can you tell me why the cursor is blinking again? Anybody, can you help me? Why is the cursor blinking again? Why? For this sc.nextInt, right? You have another sc.nextInt written, right? So it is waiting for another input. ये बोल रहा है और एक input दो भाई. You have sc.nextInt, so it is waiting for another input. Okay. So let's say I supply the input as 98. Okay. Now the moment I press enter, what will happen? This sc.nextInt will read this integer 98, encounter the new line character, stop reading, and store this 98 in variable b. So when I print a and b, a will get a value of 10, 10 will be printed, and b has a value of 98, so 98 is printed. So 10 and 98 are printed as it is. Okay. Are you guys able to follow along? We'll try to take different inputs so that it becomes more clear. But is it making sense what is happening? Yes, we'll do it with space also. Okay. Please explain again. See, what are we doing? First of all, if you run this program, right, what is happening? See, my cursor will be blinking here, waiting. My cursor is waiting, right? So I am at line number 13, sc.nextInt. It is waiting for some input. So let's say I write 50 and I press enter. The moment I press enter, what will happen? sc.nextInt, this nextInt will start reading the integer. So it will read the integer 50, encounters the new line character. It will stop and it will store 50 inside variable a. When I press enter, sc.nextInt will start reading. It will read this number 50, encounters the new line character here. It will store the number 50 inside variable a. Got that? Now again, my cursor is blinking. That means I'm waiting on line number 14. Another sc.nextInt waiting for input. So let's say I give input as 500. Now, the moment you press enter, what will happen? The moment I press enter, sc.nextInt will start reading this number 5000, encounter the new line character, store the number 5000 in the variable b, and it will move forward. Right? So the moment you press enter, what will happen? 5000 will be stored in variable b, and then we are printing the values of a and b, that is 50 and 5000 will be printed. Okay? So that is what is happening. Okay, let's try to make some more modifications. Okay. Now let's say I am supplying inputs like this, 45 space 50, right? I can also supply inputs like this, nobody is asking. Now, currently I am waiting at line number 13, right? Now, the moment I press enter, you know what will happen? Let's see. The moment I press enter, you see that the cursor does not wait anymore. पहले case में क्या हो रहा था? It was waiting for 2 times, right, for my input. But this time I have given 2 inputs separated by space. So what will happen? The moment I press enter, ये line number 13 जो है ना, this sc.nextInt will run. So it will read the number 45, then it encounters a space. So the moment this sc.nextInt encounters a space, it will stop here. So it will stop at this particular space, reads the number 45 and stores it in variable A. Now I come to line 14. Line number 14 is another sc.nextInt, right? And my cursor is here. My cursor is at this space, okay? The first sc.nextInt has read this number 45 and now it is at the space, right? So there is another sc.nextInt and there is some data already lying ahead, right? So what will happen? This sc.nextInt will read this data. So क्या होगा guys? Try to understand. 45, this is a space and this is a 50. So guys, try to understand what happens. The moment I press enter now, the first sc.nextInt will run. It will read this number 45, encounters the space. The moment it encounters the space, my cursor will stop here. So this number 45 is read by this first sc.nextInt and this will be stored in the variable A. So variable A is containing 45. Now what will happen? I come to line number 14, which is another sc.nextInt, and you see here, guys, what is happening. There is already data inside this line, right? And you are standing on a space. So what does sc.nextInt do? It will skip all the spaces. Does sc.nextInt read a space? No. See, sc.nextInt क्या करता है? It will read an integer until it gets a space or a new line character. ठीक है? But वो read integer करता है. It doesn't read spaces, right? So when this sc.nextInt run, you are on this space. So this sc.nextInt will skip this space. Space को तो read करेगा नहीं. It will skip the space, read this number 50, encounter the new line character here. Stop. This number 50 will be taken and stored in the variable B. Okay? That is why my cursor didn't wait any other time for me. So this 50 now is stored in the variable B. And now in line number 15 and 16, we just print the values of A and B, which is 45 and 50. Is this part making sense? In the first case, I had to, my cursor was waiting 2 times, but here it is not waiting. Why? Because both the inputs I have supplied together only. So the first sc.nextInt will read a 45 and stop at this space. When the second sc.nextInt work, it is at space, so it will skip all the spaces. Space to read karta nahi hai. It will skip the spaces and it will read this integer 50, encounters the new line character, stops reading, and it will store this integer 50 inside variable B. Okay? Run the test again. Okay, let's do it once again. 4, 5 give space their input. सब बताता हूँ. ठीक है, फिर से बताता हूँ. See guys, one thing that you want to understand very, very carefully. Okay, let's take first simplify it even further, right? Look. If you understand this thing, now my job in the future will become a little bit simpler. See, what I'm telling you, forget 2 inputs at this time, right? Just take 1 input, right? So say take input, right? So see, the sc.nextInt will read an integer till it encounters a new line character or a space, right? So अभी हम लोग बोलते हैं, just print ln. Okay. Now what I am asking you is, let's try to run the code, right? अभी मैं क्या बोलता हूँ? Let's give some spaces and let's write the number 56. Okay. Now when I press enter, what will happen? This sc.nextInt will start running. Okay. तो क्या हो रहा है? देखो starting में space है ना. But does sc.nextInt read a space? No. So it will skip all the spaces. See guys, you have some spaces in the beginning and then you have 56, right? And then you press enter. So this sc.nextInt will start running. The cursor here, it will start reading from here. These are spaces, right? So does sc.nextInt read a space? No. So it will skip all the spaces. All the spaces will be skipped. Then it will read the number 56. Pura number 56 read here. It encounters the new line character, so it will stop. So this sc.nextInt, it will skip the spaces, read the number 56, encounters the new line character, so it will stop. So the number 56 is read and this will be stored in the variable A. So when you print A, you will see that only 56 is getting printed. देखो ना guys. See, आप जब sc.nextInt run करो and you are on a space, तो मैंने क्या बोला? nextInt does not read spaces. Okay. When I am running nextInt, when I am pressing on the button, and I am on a space already, it will skip all the spaces. देखो भाई, जब आप बटन प्रेस कर रहे हो तो मतलब आपको कुछ इनपुट लेना है. Okay, when I am pressing a button, that means I need to take some input. And I know that nextInt does not read spaces. So when a nextInt is running and I am on a space, right? So all the spaces will be skipped. NextInt will skip all the spaces. Then it will read the number 56, encounters a new line character, so it will stop. फिर nextInt बोलेगा, boss, my job has been done. I have read an integer successfully. And that integer is 56. And that integer 56 will be stored in the variable A, which we can see. The moment I press enter, you will see 56 is printed in the nextInt. Is this part making sense? nextInt reads an integer, right? It does not read spaces. It does not read spaces. So if you are on spaces, it will skip all the spaces, right? But let's say it has read an integer. So when will it stop? The moment it gets a space, it will stop after reading an integer. Or the moment it gets a new line character, it will stop. Okay? Is this making sense? What I'm trying to tell? ये वाला समझ आ रहा है? See, let me explain. Explain scanner syntax, right? So what is a scanner syntax? Scanner SC. So SC is a label to a scanner. Think of it like SC is a label to a scanner. And what is the scanner object? This is the scanner object that you are creating. New scanner. And within parentheses, you write system.in. So this is a scanner remote that will be reading inputs from the terminal. Okay. ये syntax याद कर लो. It will help you a lot, right? You will understand it in more details when you reselect OOT. Okay. Can you explain 11? How Spring ARP is contributing with scanner? Okay. I told you yesterday, forget about all these things, right? We don't have to worry. And 12, how object created. Again, something that is not to be discussed now. Okay. So forget about these things, guys. Forget about these things. I think this is outside of the scope currently. Okay. So basically, now if I tell you what happens is, now let's take two inputs, right? Now you will be able to understand that line. Okay. Now if I run it, now see what happens, guys. My cursor is waiting to give me some inputs, right? So let's say I gave 14. Okay. Then I put some spaces and I put 20. Okay. The moment I hit enter, what will happen, guys? The first sc.nextInt will run. Okay. NextInt will run. NextInt to kya karna hai, guys? NextInt has to read an integer. So it will read this integer 14. It's a space here, so it will stop. So the number 14 will be stored inside variable. Then again I come to line 14 and this nextInt will start running and I am at a space, right? My cursor is at a space and there is data to be processed, right? So what does nextInt does? nextInt will not read the space, right? So it will skip all the spaces. The second nextInt will skip all the spaces, read the number 20 and then it gets a new line character, so it will stop. So 20 will be read and stored inside variable. Okay, so A will be 14 and B will be 20. So if I just try to run it and show you, let's put an enter here. 14 and 20. Okay. So guys, nextInt क्या करता है? I'm repeating once again in Hindi and English. nextInt reads an integer from the keyboard. Okay. Now, nextInt will read an integer. When will it stop? जब वो एक integer read कर रहा है ना, when nextInt is reading an integer, it will stop when it gets a space. देखो, उसने read करना start कर दिया. It has started reading the integer. So it will stop when it gets a space or it gets a new line character. Okay. But let's say nextInt wants to read an integer and it is on a space, right? Then all the spaces will be skipped. Okay, and it will read the integer. तो भैया nextInt क्या है? nextInt integer को read करता है, ठीक है? तो जब integer read करना start कर दिया ना, तब वो कब रुकता है? The moment you are at a space or you are at a new line character, तब वो रुकता है. But मान लो nextInt work कर रहा है और मैं space पे ही खड़ा हूँ, starting में मैं space पे हूँ, तो इसका मतलब क्या होगा? nextInt को integer read करना है ना, तो it will skip all the spaces, then it will read integer. और एक बार वो integer read करना start कर दिया, तब वो कब रुकेगा? It will stop when it gets a space or it gets a new line character. Okay, so nextInt will read an integer. Once it starts reading an integer, then it will stop when it gets a space or a new line character. But even before it gets an integer, if there are spaces now, it will skip all the spaces and then it will read the integer. That is sc.nextInt for you all. Is this making sense a little bit better now? Making sense, guys? Yes. Is everyone following how we are taking inputs? Work kya hai iska? To take inputs, right? If you want to interact with the user, right? You want to take inputs from the user. Let's say you want to take two numbers input from the user and print that sum. That is how we will be taking inputs of integers, right? So guys, nextInt is a method that helps us to take inputs of integers from the keyboard. Similarly, very similar to nextInt, you will see different methods that help you to take inputs from the keyboard. Okay. Now, what are the methods, guys? For integer, I am taking the input using the nextInt. Okay. Now you will ask me, hey, others, how do I take the input of a long? How do I take input of a double? How do I take input of a float? How do I do all these things, right? Before that, let me just do one small thing and tell me the output, guys. Okay. So first of all, what happens, guys? When I run the code, cursor will be waiting for an input, right? Abhi kya hoga? If I give 10, press enter, then what will happen? 10 will be printed, right? Why? Because the next line is system.out.println, so 10 is printed. Again, cursor is waiting. Now, what I want to tell you is, let's say, if you are giving more numbers, then your scanner can read. Let me tell you what I'm trying to say. See, you gave 10, read it, printed. Now let's say you're giving 5, 10, 98, right? So this nextInt will read the number 5, it encounters a space and it will stop, right? So these two numbers will be ignored by your program because there is no nextInt to read those two numbers, right? So my output will be, my output will be what? 10 to print hogi kya? What will be the value of B? 5. So if I put enter here, just 5 will be printed. This 10 and 98 are ignored because there are no nextInt to read these two integers. Okay. Now, very similar to nextInt. If you understand nextInt now, my job becomes extremely simple, right? So similar to nextInt, you have a method nextLong, and this nextLong will help me to read a long number from the keyboard. Okay. So guys, let's see how to read a long number. Long C is equal to sc.nextLong. Okay. And for simplicity, what I'll do is I'll comment these lines of code for the moment. Okay. Now I'm saying long C is equal to sc.nextLong, and then I'm printing C. Again, guys, next long also works in the same way. It will keep on reading a long number until it gets a space or it gets a new line character. And if it has not read a long number and it is at a space, then it will skip all the spaces and then read the long number. So next long works very, very similar to next int. The simple difference is it is used for reading a long number from the keyboard. Okay. So now what you can do, you can give a long number that is, beyond the range of an integer as well. So now the question comes, when you are supplying a very long number from the keyboard, do you have to write a capital L at the end? The answer is no. The answer is no, right? Because when I'm calling the next long now, my compiler already knows that whatever number this next long will scan, that is has to be interpreted like a long. Okay. मैंने क्या function use किया? sc.nextLong. So automatically compiler knows whatever number will be read, that has to be treated like a long because you are pressing the button of next long to take the input of a long from the keyboard. Okay. So you don't have to write capital L here. Okay. You just write the number that, now when you press enter, what will happen? sc.nextLong will work. It will read this number and it will store it in C. Okay, it will read, encounter the new line character, stop, store the number in C, and then we will print this number in the next line. Okay, so if you put enter, see it's printed. Okay, so next long, very, very similar to next int, but used for taking long numbers input from the user. Okay, similarly, you have next byte, next short, but not very frequently used, right? So these are for the whole numbers. Now the question comes, how do I take inputs of a decimal number like float or a double, right? Very, very similar, same concept, 100% same. You have functions known as next float. Next float is there, which helps you to take the input of a floating point number from the keyboard. Okay. And same funda, it will keep on taking input until it gets a new line character or a space. Okay. And if it is at a space, it will be skipping all the spaces before reading the number. Right. So this is next float for you. And similar to next float, you will have something known as a next double. Next double will be used for taking inputs of double from the keyboard double. Okay. So if I just want to show you one particular example here, so let's take a double input, double D is equal to sc.next double. Okay, and then what I'm doing is I'm just printing B. Okay, so let's comment this next long. I just want to take one input. So let's run this code. Now I'm going to write doubles. Let's write 4.56789. So this will be taken. sc.next double will start running. It will read this entire number as a double, store it in the variable D, and D is printed later. So see 4.56789. That is my output. Okay. So very, very similar, guys. All these methods are very simple to understand. If you understand one, you understand all, right? So next float and next double are used for reading floating point numbers and double numbers respectively. So we know for whole numbers, we know for floats and doubles, right? Now what is left? Boolean. Okay. How do you read a Boolean? Very, very similar. Next Boolean. You have a method by the name of next Boolean that will help you to read a Boolean from the keyboard, right? So let us try to understand and analyze this also. How do we do it, right? So Boolean B is equal to sc dot next Boolean. Okay. And then let's print the value of B. Okay. So guys, what is a Boolean? A Boolean is either a true or a false, right? So it will read a true or a false from the keyboard, right? You just have to write a true or a false. It will read that. It will store it inside the Boolean variable B. So let's say I write false and I press enter, then what will happen? Next Boolean will read this false and then it will store a 0 inside this Boolean variable B. Just to tell you that B is false, right? The Boolean variable B consists of false. So when you print B, you will see false is printed on the next line. See, false. Okay. And similarly, if you want to store true inside this Boolean B, what you will do? Write true. Okay. So when you hit enter, next Boolean will read this true and it will store it inside this Boolean variable B. And in the next line, you are printing the value of B that is true. Okay. So let's press enter and see true has been printed. Okay. So this is how we are taking inputs of Boolean values from the keyboard. That is either a true or a false by using the next Boolean method. Okay. Cool. So now we know how to take inputs for whole numbers. We know how to take inputs from user for doubles and floats. We know how to take inputs from Boolean, right? Now, how do we take input for string and character, right? So actually, I can, let's talk of strings, right? Characters I will talk of later. Maybe string I can briefly tell you while the flow is on, right? So how do you take inputs of a string? Unfortunately, there is nothing known as a next string, as you might assume at this point of time. There is nothing known as a next string, okay? For strings, if you want to read strings, now there are two methods available. One is the next, and the other is next line. These are the two methods available to read a string from the keyboard. Okay. And what is the difference between these two methods? See guys, the next, when you do sc.next, right, this will read a string until it gets a space or a new line character. The moment it gets a space, it will stop. It will stop, right? It will stop. Okay. So sc.next, it works very similar to next int, next long, thing like that, right? So it will read a string and the moment it gets a space, it will stop. The moment it gets a space or a new line character, it will stop. Okay. And if you are already on a space and you are doing sc.next, then it will skip all the spaces, read the word, and then it will stop when it gets a space or a new line character. Okay. So next is used for reading words. Okay. Particular word read karne ke wo kaam aata hai. And what does next line do? Next line will read the entire string and it will stop only when it gets the new line character. So next line also reads the spaces. Okay. Let me take a couple of examples to help you guys understand this. So let's say string s is equal to Let me do sc dot next. Okay, let's take a couple of examples and try to understand it better. And let's do print ln. So what will happen, guys? What did I tell you? How does next work? Next will basically keep on reading input until it, it will start reading a string, and then it will stop only when it gets a space or a new line character. Okay. So let's say I have some spaces and then I have hello. Okay. And then I press enter. So next will start running. But guys, next को starting में space दिख रहा है. So it will skip all the spaces, right? Because sc.next doesn't read the spaces, right? It starts reading a word. It will read a string. And then it will stop when it gets a space or a new line character. But even before reading the word, there are spaces, right? So all the spaces will be skipped by sc.next. And then it will read hello, and then it gets a new line character. So it will stop, and hello will be stored in this string s. Okay. So when you print s, you will see that hello is printed in the next line. These spaces will not be there, right? Because next skips all the spaces. देखो भैया sc.next क्या करता है? If you have spaces even before reading the word now, then those spaces will be skipped. But once you have started reading the word, then next will stop when it gets a space or it gets a new line character. Okay, so let us try to understand what will be the output for this space, hello. Okay, so if I press enter, you will see that only whatever this complicated hello we have written, that will be the output. See in the next line, only hello. All the spaces have been written, right? So that is why we say that when you say something like this, right? So this is a sentence. Let's say this is the string that I have written, right? This is a sentence. Now, when we take inputs via next, now what will happen? Next is only used for reading a word. So, kya hoga, guys? This sc.next will read this, and then it will stop at the space. The next time I write an sc.next, try to understand. Okay, we cannot write code now. First, pehle code likhte hain, fir karte hain. Stop. 1 second. I'm just giving you an example. 1 second. Okay. Now let's try to run it, right? Now let's say you have a sentence of multiple words. Right? This is my sentence. So what will happen, guys? Now when I press enter, the first sc.next will read this and it will stop at the space. The second sc.next will skip the space first, read is and then stop at the space. And the third sc.next will again, what is happening in this? Okay, let's go to this thing here. It's becoming a little problematic. Oh wait. So if I run it, let's quickly see. Some server issues, I guess, maybe. Okay, so this is mine. Okay, and let's say sentence. So let's see what's the output. THSI is mine. So how is it working? Let us now try to understand, right? So see, guys, your string was this. THSI is my sentence. Okay. So now what happens, guys? The moment you press enter, this sc.next will start, right? It will read this word THSI, and then when it gets a space, it stops, right? So THSI will be stored in S, and that is printed. Now the second sc.next will run. Next will run. Now it is at a space. Does it read space? No. So it skips the space, starts reading this word IS, and then the moment it encounters a space, it will stop. So the word IS will be stored in T. So T is IS that I have printed, right? Now again, there is another sc.next. So what will happen? You are at a space. So first of all, the spaces will be skipped, and then it will read my, reach a new space, and it will stop. So my will be stored in the variable q, and that is what I have printed. So that is what is happening. So guys, sc.next, see guys, this entire thing sentence will be ignored because there are no other next or next line to read the particular string. Okay. So sc.next is like for reading a word. It reads word. It does not read spaces, right? So basically sc.next, the next method will read a word, will start reading a word, and it will stop when it gets a space or a new line character. Okay. And if there are spaces, and if it is on spaces, right, and you are calling sc.next, then it will skip the spaces and then start reading the word. Okay. So the word read karta hai, rukta hai when it gets a space or a new line character. It doesn't read spaces. That is why we say that next is used for reading the words. Word use karne ka kaam aata hai. And what does next line do? Next line reads the entire line. The entire line can be read by using a next line. Okay. Because sc.next line will keep on reading the string until it gets a new line character. So it reads the entire sentence and it will stop only when it gets the new line character. So let's say I'm saying string s is equal to sc dot next line. So we also say that next line is used for reading the entire sentence. So let's see. Let's say I'm going, this is my sentence. Okay. So when I press enter, see this entire thing will be printed again. Why? Because sc.next line will read this entire string. Okay. Gets the new line character, will stop, store it inside us, and we are printing it here. Okay. In the next line. So that is what is the difference between a next and a next line. Is this making sense, guys? Okay. Now I'll give you a quick question. Okay. Help me. Help me with what will be the output. And this will test your understanding. Okay. Um, let me think of something interesting. Okay. Okay. I'll give you the input and you need to tell me the output. Okay. Okay. So, yes, guys. Okay, anybody, very, very quickly, can you tell me what will be the output? I'll press enter. I'll just press enter after this. Anybody? Can you guys help me? Okay, let's try to understand, right? Let's try to understand what has happened. Okay, if you understand this, I am pretty sure you'll be in a good space, right? So, guys, the moment I press enter, what is the first thing? sc.next. There are spaces. So these spaces will be skipped. It reads HELLO, encounters another space, so it will stop. So HELLO will be stored in S. So the contents of S is just HELLO. Remember. Okay. Now what happens? Again, sc.next is running, right? This line 36 ka fir se sc.next will run. So you are standing on a space. So all these spaces will be skipped. It reads FOLKS, folks, again encounters a space and it will stop. So this sc.nextend will read the word folks and it will store it in T. So T is consisting of folks. Okay. Okay. Now what happens, guys? The next is sc.nextline. So I'm standing on this space, right? And now I am running sc.nextline. And the next line does not have a problem with spaces. So you are standing on this space, so you will start reading from here only. You will read this space, read this space, read this space, read this space. THIS is your test. Entire thing will be read. You get the new line character, you will stop. So boss Q will consist of, see how many spaces? These many spaces which are there. Okay. Then this your test. This entire thing now will be in Q. Okay. So let's say there are 4 spaces in between folks and this, right? So Q will contain those 4 spaces. Okay. And then it will contain this is your test entirely. Okay. And that is how we are getting output. Hello. Then T is consisting of folks. So hello folks come together. Then we add Q. So Q initially is consisting of spaces. Then this is your test entire thing. Is this making sense to everyone? समझ आ रहा है what is happening? Yes. Okay, great. Cool, guys. So now we use a string now. Why? One more time. Okay, let me repeat. See what is happening. Anand, try to understand. There are some spaces. मैं अभी ना अगर random इधर लिख देता हूँ. Hello. Again, let's say you have 3 spaces or a couple of spaces, whatever. Then let's say again you have folks. Okay. Let's say you have 2 spaces, whatever. And this is your कुछ भी है, ठीक है? I don't care. Now what happens? When I press enter, this sc.next will run. इधर है मेरा cursor. There is spaces, so it will skip the spaces and it will read HELLO. This will be read. And now the cursor comes to this space. So this sc.next will stop. sc.next will stop. And this word hello that it has read, that will be stored in string s. Okay. Now the cursor is here and I have another sc.next. So what will happen? sc.next doesn't read spaces. So these 3 spaces will be skipped. And then it will read FOLKS, encounters the space and it will stop. So FOLKS, folks, will be read and this will be stored in T. Okay. Now you are standing on this space and again the call is for next line. Next line does not have a problem with spaces. So what will happen? I will start reading from here itself. Space, THIS, space, IS, your pura cheez read hoga till I get the new line character and then this entire string will be stored in the variable Q. And then I'm just concatenating it. That's it. Okay. So next line reads an entire line. Okay, it reads spaces as well. It does not have a problem with spaces, right? But next ho gaya, next int ho gaya, next long, next double, all these things, right? They read their data type and will stop when they get a space or they get a new line character. And if there are spaces, before even reading the data type, then they will skip all the spaces. So next is used for reading a word, whereas next line is used for reading the entire sentence. Okay? Okay, guys, is this making sense? Let's see. So are you guys all aware of how to take a string as input? Are you able to follow along? Yes, yes. Okay, great. So now we know how to take user inputs of different data types, starting from 7 primitive data types, including, byte, short, int, long, float, double, boolean, and we also know for string, right? The only thing that is left is character, right? That we'll discuss later. Remind me in the future that we have to discuss how to take inputs of characters. I'll talk about it in later in more detail, right? So now we are all clear with taking inputs. So how to take user input, done. Talk about the scanner object, done. Import java.util, explain this line, hopefully done. Okay. Talk about packages, already talked about packages, done. How to take inputs of different data types, done. Discuss about next int, next long, next float, next double, next boolean, etc, done. Okay. We can skip how to take input for string and char at the moment. Told you string, char, we will discuss later. Okay. Now we are just left with a very small amount of things, right? So let's come to this in this order, right? So first of all, I'll tell you this, then we'll solve a couple of problems, right? So that you also have some homework at your end to solve, and then we will talk about explicit typecasting. That is the last topic for today. Okay. So we'll try to wrap up by 11:20 kind of thing, right? So let's see. But yeah, let's come back. So guys, one small thing that I wanted to tell you, right? That's just an additional piece of information, right? What did we tell? Boss, whenever you make a variable, right? Let's say I'm making a variable int a is equal to 10. Later on, if I want to update, I can do it like this: a is equal to a plus 3. So the value of a will now change to 15. Or later, if I want, I can assign a is equal to 0. I can manipulate and change the values of a variable. But what if I want that, boss, the value of the variable should be constant and it should not be changed in my program? If I want, boss, I don't want the value of the variable to change in my program, then we use a final keyword. Okay. So I say something like, let's take, for example, pi. Pi has a universal value of 3.14, right? And nobody can change the value. So how do I write? Final int, pi, let's say pi is equal to 3 point, int le dena, okay? Final int x, let's take an example. Final int x is equal to 5. So what I'm telling, this variable x is of type integer and it is storing the value 5. But I am telling this is final. That means nobody can change the value of the variable x. This is final. Nobody can change its value, right? So if you try to change its value, x is equal to 10 now, the compiler will complain to you. Hey, you are trying to change the value. See? Cannot assign a value to final variable. A final variable can only be given value once. You cannot change the value of a final variable. Okay. You cannot do x is equal to 10 or you cannot do x is equal to x plus 10. No, you cannot change the value of a final variable. Once you have told that your variable is final, that means nobody can change the value of the variable in your program. Okay. Small and sweet, simple, information. Okay. Now let's come to solve some problems, right? So that, it's not only theory and we are doing good problem solving as well, right? So let's come to home. Let's see what all problems we have. Okay. So guys, this 3rd October one, Hello World wala thing, we have discussed entirely the 9 questions. So make sure that all of you are along with the course, along with the lecture, you are also clear with the concepts and you are also able to solve problems on your own. Okay. Now let's come to today's class's problem, right? So couple of problems we will discuss and couple of problems I'll give to you as homework, which you will try for tomorrow, right? So tomorrow we will discuss those homework problems. Okay. So your homework will be Celsius to Fahrenheit and Fahrenheit to Celsius. These 2 questions I want you to try as homework. Please note it down, guys. Celsius to Fahrenheit, Fahrenheit to Celsius. These 2 questions are your homework for tomorrow's class. I expect everyone to, do these 2 questions on your own so that we can discuss it tomorrow and, all your doubts can also be taken care of. Okay. So let's start with a question here. Let's do input output in Java. Okay. So if needed, I think we can also move this explicit typecasting to tomorrow, right? Constant variable bhi bata diya. Okay. Now we are just left with 3 small points. I think already I have mentioned a couple of, but yeah, let's do it. Okay. So guys, let's get started with this question, input output in Java. In this challenge, you will learn to read input for the first time. We already know how to read inputs. I have told you, right? Most popular way to read input in Java is by using a scanner. Great. We already know. For example, scanner equal to new scanner system.in. So they are creating a scanner object that will read input from the keyboard or the terminal. Okay. And what is the name of their object? Scanner. Hum log SC likh rahe the, they have written the name scanner. Now, how are they reading integers? My int is equal to scanner.nextInt. So the nextInt method will read an integer from the keyboard and it will store it in my int. And then they are printing my int is the value of my int. Okay. So the code above creates a scanner object named scanner and uses it to read an integer. It prints the output using system.out.println. So if our input is 5, if the user input is 5, your output should be my int is 5. This should be your output. If the user input is 25, your output should be my int is 25. Okay. Is everyone clear with the question? Let's, 1 second. What are they doing? In this challenge, you must read 3 integers. Each integer must be printed on a new line. Okay. I think this doesn't, okay. Okay. I think this is not the question, right? This just told you that this is how you take inputs from integer and you want to print it, you can print it like this. There is a plus missing here. There should be a plus. But what is the task for this particular question? Let us try to read. In this challenge, you must read 3 integers and then print them. Each integer must be printed on a new line. So if my input is these 3 integers, your output should also be these 3 integers. Okay. And common mistakes here, do not print anything extra. Just print the numbers only in separate lines. Make sure you give 3 integers in the input box before running your code. If you do not give integers as input, you will face an error. Okay. So what the computer or what this program wants us to do is read three integers from the keyboard, and we want to print the three integers in three separate lines. Pretty simple code. Can you guys quickly try it out? Yes, guys. Can you try to make a scanner read three integers and print them on three separate lines? I'm pretty sure most of you should be able to do this, right? It's very chat mode. Don't off. Next string. There is nothing known as a next string, right? There is next and next line. Okay. I think chats we need to off in between, otherwise it becomes too many messages and it's very difficult to read them, and a lot of spam happens. So don't worry. If you have any doubts, we're happy to take it up later also. And guys, please make use of the live doubt sessions that have been started, right? The timings for the live doubt sessions is pretty great. They are spanning the entire day. Utilize them. Okay, they are specially started for all of you guys only, right? Because of the feedback from the students. So please try to make best use of the resources. Okay. So let's quickly write this question. First of all, we'll make a scanner. You can make a scanner of any name. I use the name SC is equal to new scanner within brackets system.in. Got my scanner object. Now what do I do? I want to read three integers. Let's read int a is equal to sc.nextInt. I will read one integer. Let's read another integer. Int b is equals to sc.nextInt. Read another integer. Let's read another integer. Int c is equal to sc.nextInt. So now I have read three integers from the keyboard. हो गया तीनों integer read. Now I just want to print these integers in three separate lines. So what do? System.out.println a, then system.out.println b, then system.out.println c. As simple as that. So you will be printing the value of the three variables in three separate lines. Okay. Now let's try to run this code and see, right? So for my input, let's give 10, 20, 30. This is the input. So what will happen? The first sc.nextInt will read this 10. The second one will read 20. The third one will read 30, right? And then I will print A, B, and C in separate lines. So 10, 20, 30 will be printed in separate lines. So let's try to run the code and see our output. I am expecting 10, 20, and 30 to be printed in separate lines. Let's see. See, 10, 20, and 30 are printed in separate lines. So that is fine. Let's try to submit it and see whether it's working fine or not. Yes, guys, it's working fine, right? It's working fine. So anybody has any doubt in this problem, what we have done, okay? And if you want, you can give three integers like this also. That is not a problem. 10, 20, 30. You can also give it like this. So what will happen? The moment you run the program, the first nextInt will read 10, the second will read 20, the third will read 30. Stored in variables A, B, and C, and then you will print it down to separate lines, okay? So in the output, you will see first 10 getting printed, then 20 in the second line, then 30 in the third line, okay? So let's see. Yes, it's working fine. So any problem, guys, in this question, or shall we move ahead? It's a basic question for input output. Fine. No problem. Repeat again. See what is happening. You want to take three integers input and you want to print them in three separate lines, right? So what are you doing? This sc.nextInt kya karega? Let's say you are giving input as 10, 20, 30. So the first sc.nextInt will read this 10, reach the new line character, will stop. So 10 is stored in variable A. Then the next sc.nextInt will read this 20, hit the new line character, it will stop. Okay. Then the next text, it will read the number 30. Okay. 30 read karega, reaches the new line character, will stop. So A is containing 10, B is containing 20, C is containing 30. Now what am I doing? System.out.println A. So 10 is printed and the cursor moves to the new line. System.out.println B. 20 is printed and cursor moves to the new line. System.out.println C. 30 is printed and cursor moves to the new line. So 10, 20, and 30, the three inputs that we took from the user, they are now printed in three separate lines. That is what we are doing. Okay. Cool, guys. So let's move forward. Let's try to do one more question. Okay. Let's try to take this. So guys, for tomorrow, let's your homework will be Celsius to Fahrenheit, Fahrenheit to Celsius, and let's see. Can you do Agent Binod? What is Agent Binod? So आप लोगों को भी थोड़ा practice का मौका मिलेगा. Yes, you can do Agent Binod. So Agent Binod also please try for homework tomorrow, right? So that I can discuss it tomorrow. Let's see this. What is this? Given two positive integers. Can you calculate the result of performing this? Okay, guys. Okay. So guys, please, all the questions that you see here, right? So after the end of today's class, all the questions that you see here, the 6 questions, right? You can solve all the questions on your own. Okay. So 2 questions I am discussing. The remaining questions I will expect you guys to try yourself as homework. And in tomorrow's class, we will discuss those questions. You can try all of them now. Okay. Cool. So let's come to this question. Circle area perimeter. Okay, guys, what is this question? You are required to take radius of a circle as input from the user. Okay. And finally print the area and perimeter of the circle. So you want to take the input of radius and you want to print the area and perimeter of the circle. Okay. I don't know why do they say this perimeter. Ideally they should say circumference, but same thing. Okay. So the input is one line that contains the number which is the radius of the circle. Okay. Print the area of the circle in the first line, print the perimeter of the circle in the second line. So if the input is 4, that means radius of the circle is 4. So guys, what is the area? What is the formula for area of a circle? Pi r square. Please correct me if I am wrong. Okay. And what is circumference? 2 pi r. And what is the value of pi? Pi is 3.14. Okay. So radius input here, I will first of all print the area, then I will print the perimeter. Similarly, the input is 7.2. My radius is 7.2. So you will have to print the area for this circle and you have to print the perimeter or the circumference of this circle, right? So your radius can be a decimal number also. Radius can be anything from 0 se lekar this whatever 1 lakh or whatever, right? So is the question clear to everyone? We have to take the input of radius from the user and we want to print the area and the perimeter of the circle. Okay. Can anybody help me? What data type is radius of? Not clear. Then you see, let's try to read this once again, right? See, first of all, you have to take a user input. The user will give you a number, which is the radius of the circle. Okay, see, you are required to take radius of a circle as input from user. And using that radius, you need to tell the user what is the area and perimeter of the circle of that radius. Okay, you will read a radius from input and you will print to the output what area of the circle in the first line. And in the second line, we need to print the perimeter of the circle. So guys, my radius is a decimal number. See, 7.2. It can be anything between 0 and whatever this number is, right? So ideally, I will use a double data type for higher precision, right? So let's make a scanner. Scanner SC is equal to new scanner. Okay, system.in. Made a scanner. Now let's read or let's take the input of radius from the user. Int, not int. What will be the data type? Double. So double radius RAD is equal to SC.next double. I will read a double number from the keyboard and that is nothing but the radius and I will store it inside the variable RAD. Now what do I need to do, guys? I need to print the area and then I need to print the perimeter. Okay. So guys, do you agree that, let's make a variable int, not int, again, a double, okay, pi. And what is the value of pi, guys? 3.14. I don't know whether they are wanting more precision or less, right? So I made a variable pi and I have initialized it with 3.14. Now guys, tell me, what is the area of the circle? What is the area? Let's do it like this, double. Area is equal to, what is the area, guys? Pi r square, right? So what will I do? Pi into radius into radius. Is this the formula for the area? Pi into r into r. That is the area of the circle. Okay. And what will be the perimeter of the circle? Double perimeter is equal to what? 2 pi r. So 2 into pi into radius. Okay. This will be the perimeter. Now I want to print the area and print the perimeter in two separate lines. So system.out.println area. Then system.out.println perimeter. Okay. Now, guys, let's try to run it. Let's try to run it for an input of 4. Let's try to run our code and see whether the output is coming as expected or not. See, 50.24 and 25.12. So that's fine. The precision of pi 3.14, that's fine. And it's matching our output. Let's take another case, 7.2. Okay. Let's try to run code and see what's the output for 7.2. 162.7776, 45.216. So the output is coming out to be fine. So what have I done, guys? Take the radius input from the user. You have a variable pi, and then you can just do double area is equals to pi into r square, and perimeter is 2 into pi into r, and just print them on different lines. Okay. So let's try to submit this code because the inputs, outputs are coming fine. All the test cases have passed, right?